They gave her 60 seconds to shift before the blade fell. 60 seconds to prove she wasn't human. 60 seconds to save her own life. For 20 years, Lola Richardson had been the only wolfless member of the Silvercrest pack. Today, Alpha Jordan McBride, her fated mate who had rejected her 3 times, would finally end his embarrassment. But as the executioner raised his silver axe, and the crowd chanted for her death, something ancient stirred beneath her skin. The Alpha wanted her dead. Instead, he awakened the one creature even his bloodline had sworn to serve. Watch what happens when the girl with no wolf becomes the Golden Luna, and the Alpha who sentenced her becomes the first to kneel. This is... Seconds before execution, her wolf finally emerged. If you're already hooked and want to see the Alpha's face when he realizes his fatal mistake, smash that like button right now. Trust me, you'll want to remember this moment. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The Execution That Failed. The execution platform stood in the center of the training grounds, a monument to pack justice that had seen blood spilled for 3 generations. Today, it would claim another life, or so they thought. Lola Richardson's bare feet dragged through November mud as 2 warriors hauled her forward. The iron chains around her wrists had rubbed her skin raw, leaving trails of blood that mixed with the freezing rain. She didn't fight them. What was the point? She had no wolf to call on, no strength to break free, no pack to defend her. She had nothing. The crowd formed a suffocating circle around the platform. 300 wolves, their eyes flashing amber and green in the dim afternoon light. People she'd grown up with. People she'd helped. People who now screamed for her death. Murderer, wolfless leech, kill the human. A rotten apple exploded against her cheek. She didn't flinch. The humiliation had long since carved her hollow. On the platform stood Alpha Jordan McBride, and even through her terror, Lola's traitorous heart still stuttered at the sight of him. 6'4" of lethal power wrapped in ceremonial black, his dark hair plastered to his forehead by rain. His jaw was set so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. 3 years ago, the moon goddess had whispered his name in Lola's dreams. Mate, the most sacred word in their world. 3 years ago, Jordan had looked at her with disgust and said, "I reject you." He'd rejected her twice more after that. Once when she'd tried to explain the mate bond. Once when she'd begged him to just give her a chance. 3 rejections. 3 scars burned into her soul. But the bond hadn't broken. It took both parties to sever it completely, and Jordan had never finished the ritual. He'd left her dangling in limbo, not his mate, but not free either. Just nothing. Beside him stood Roseanne Willis, the beta's daughter. Beautiful. Curvaceous. Everything Lola wasn't. Roseanne clung to Jordan's arm, her perfect face arranged in fake grief, dabbing at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. "Bring the prisoner forward," Jordan's voice boomed across the grounds. It was an alpha command, laced with power that made the wolves in the crowd whimper and bow their heads involuntarily. The warriors threw Lola down at the base of the wooden stairs. She gasped as her knees hit the mud. "Jordan, please. Do not speak my name." His growl vibrated in her bones. He descended 1 stair, looming over her like a god of vengeance. "You are accused of murdering my sister, Cassidy. You were found with her bloodied necklace in your quarters. The pack healer confirmed the scent was yours." "I didn't kill her," Lola's voice cracked. "Roseanne gave me that necklace. She said Cassidy wanted me to have it as an apology gift. I didn't know there was blood on it." Roseanne let out a theatrical sob, burying her face in Jordan's shoulder. "Oh, Jordan, how can she lie like this? I tried to be her friend. I tried to help her when everyone else mocked her for being wolfless. And now she blames me?" Jordan's arm wrapped protectively around Roseanne. When he looked back at Lola, his eyes were chips of black ice. "The evidence is irrefutable. My sister is dead. The necklace was found in your room. Your scent was all over it." "Because I held it," Lola screamed, desperation clawing up her throat. "I didn't hurt anyone. Jordan, you know me. We grew up together. You know I wouldn't." "I don't know you." His voice was cold, empty. "I know a wolfless human who somehow infiltrated my pack. I know a weak link who has brought us nothing but shame. And now I know a murderer. The crowd roared approval. "The punishment for killing pack royalty is death," Jordan announced. "Lola Richardson, you will be executed at sunset. You have one chance to prove you're not human. Shift, and I'll grant you a trial by combat instead." Lola's blood turned to ice. I can't shift. You know I can't. Then you'll die as the human you are." The warriors dragged her up the platform stairs. The wooden execution block waited, dark and stained from years of use. They forced her to her knees in front of it, positioning her neck on the curved groove worn smooth by countless condemned before her. From this angle, she could see the whole pack, hundreds of faces twisted in hatred. In the front row stood Ruth Conrad, the pack healer who had testified against her. Beside her, Henry Matthews, the head warrior who had found the necklace. And in the very back, half hidden in shadow, she saw someone else. An old woman with silver hair and cold eyes. Jordan's mother, Luna Miriam McBride. Their eyes met for just a moment. The old woman smiled. And in that smile, Lola saw the truth. But it was too late. "Executioner," Jordan's voice rang out. "Prepare the blade." A massive man in a black hood stepped forward. Dustin Gentry, the pack's executioner for 20 years. He hefted a silver axe that gleamed dully in the fading light. Silver, the one metal that could kill both werewolves and humans efficiently. The crowd began to chant, "Justice, justice, justice." Lola closed her eyes. This was it. 20 years of being called weak, useless, human. 20 years of being alone. And now, it ended here, with her mate as her executioner. "Wait." Jordan's voice cut through the chanting. The crowd fell silent. Lola's eyes snapped open. Hope fluttered weakly in her chest. Jordan descended the stairs until he stood directly in front of her. Up close she could see the dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. For just a moment, she thought she saw something flicker in his gaze. Doubt? Regret? "You have 60 seconds, he said quietly. 60 seconds to shift and prove you have a wolf. If you can do that, I'll grant you the trial. But if you can't..." He straightened, his face hardening back into stone. "Then you die." "Jordan, I've tried for 20 years. 60 seconds, Lola, starting now." He stepped back. The executioner moved into position, raising the axe high, and someone in the crowd began counting. 60. 59. 58. Lola's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd spent 2 decades trying to call her wolf. 2 decades of meditation, of prayers to the moon goddess, of desperate internal screaming. Nothing had ever answered. 55. 54. 53. "Please," she begged silently. "If there's any part of me that's wolf, please. I don't want to die. Not like this. Not for something I didn't do. Nothing." 48, 47, 46. The crowd's chanting grew louder, more frenzied. Bloodlust filled the air. Lola looked at Jordan one last time. He stood rigid, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. His wolf was right there beneath his skin. She could see the amber bleeding into his eyes. But his face remained impassive. He was really going to let her die. 35, 34, 33. Fine. If she was going to die, she'd die with her head high. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her beg. But then, in the darkness behind her closed eyelids, something stirred. A presence. Vast and ancient and burning with rage. "You were never wolfless, child," a voice whispered in her mind. It didn't sound like her own thoughts. It was deeper, older, resonating with power that made her bones vibrate. "You were caged." 28. 27. 26. "Who are you?" Lola thought frantically. "I am what they feared. I am what they tried to bury. I am yours." Heat bloomed in Lola's chest. Not painful, not yet, but building. Growing. 20, 19, 18. Jordan's wolf, Fenris, was suddenly restless. She could feel it through the broken bond. He was pacing, agitated, whining. 15. 14. 13. The heat in Lola's chest exploded outward, racing through her veins like liquid fire. Her eyes snapped open, and the world had changed. Colors were sharper, Sounds were clearer. She could smell everything, the rain, the mud, the fear, the excitement, the lies. 10, 9, 8. Her bones began to crack. Jordan's eyes widened. Wait. 7, 6, 5. Rosen's face went pale. No. No. That's not possible. 4, 3, 2. Golden light erupted from Lola's skin, so bright that the crowd screamed and covered their eyes. 1. The axe fell and shattered. Chapter 2. 59 seconds to salvation. The sound of silver shattering was like 1,000 bells ringing at once. Shards of the axe blade scattered across the wooden platform, some embedding into the posts, others raining down on the stunned crowd below. Dustin dropped the handle, stumbling backward. His hands were bleeding where the force of the impact had torn through his gloves. Lola was still kneeling at the execution block, but she wasn't shaking anymore. Steam rose from her skin as the cold rain hit her body, hissing and evaporating on contact. The golden light hadn't faded. It pulsed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat, growing brighter with each passing second. What's happening to me? Lola thought, but the ancient presence in her mind was too busy breaking free to answer. 20 years. 20 years of being trapped, suffocated, buried alive in her own body. The wolf inside her wasn't weak. She was a caged titan, finally seeing light. Impossible, Jordan breathed. He'd frozen mid-step, his alpha instincts screaming contradictory commands. Protect, flee, submit, submit. That last thought came from Fenris, and it terrified him. Roseanne's carefully maintained composure cracked. She's using dark magic. Jordan, kill her now, before. Silence. The word came from Lola's throat, but it wasn't entirely her voice. It was layered, harmonized with something older and infinitely more powerful. The command hit the crowd like a physical force. Every wolf, from the strongest warrior to the smallest omega, felt their throats close involuntarily. Even Jordan's mouth snapped shut, his alpha authority suddenly meaningless against whatever was emerging from the girl he'd tried to execute. Lola slowly lifted her head from the execution block. When she opened her eyes, they were no longer the soft hazel Jordan remembered from their childhood. They were molten gold, liquid sunlight trapped in human form. 20 years, the layered voice said. Lola rose to her feet, the iron chains around her wrists groaning. 20 years. You kept me buried, Miriam McBride. In the back of the crowd, Luna Miriam's face drained of color. 20 years of suppression spells. 20 years of wolfsbane in her food. 20 years of lies. The chains snapped like thread as Lola's muscles expanded. Did you really think you could cage a golden Luna forever? The crowd erupted into chaos. Golden Luna? That's just a myth. They've been extinct for 800 years. Run, but no one could run. The pressure of Lola's emerging aura pinned them in place, an invisible weight that grew heavier with every second. Jordan finally found his voice. Lola, wait. If you have a wolf, we can. You can what? She turned to face him fully, and Jordan actually took a step back. The mate bond, that severed, mangled thing he'd been ignoring for 3 years, suddenly roared to life. It wasn't the gentle pull it had been before. It was a demand, a biological imperative screaming at him that he was in the presence of his queen and he needed to submit now. Fenris was howling inside his head, clawing at his mental walls, desperate to break free and bow. You can give me a trial? Lola continued, her voice dripping with contempt. You can show mercy? You were going to behead me, Jordan. 60 seconds ago, you were going to murder your mate because you were too proud to listen. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. The golden light pulsed brighter. The cheap gray dress she wore began to tear at the seams as her body prepared for the shift. Your mother poisoned me for 20 years to keep my wolf dormant. She told you I was human. She planted evidence. She murdered your sister and framed me for it. Jordan's world tilted. What? No. That's... Ask her, Lola snarled, pointing at Miriam. Ask the woman who's been standing in the back, watching her plan come to fruition. Ask her why she has Cassidy's blood on her ceremonial dress, the one she thought she'd burned. All eyes turned to Miriam. The old Luna's face was a mask of rage. You stupid girl. I did what was necessary. Do you know what a golden Luna would do to our pack? To our hierarchy? You would have usurped my son's authority. You killed Cassidy? Jordan's voice was barely a whisper. You killed my sister to frame Lola? Cassidy found out about the suppression spells, Miriam hissed. She was going to tell you. She was going to ruin everything. I built this pack, Jordan. I made you alpha, and I wasn't going to let some wolfless nobody destroy it all. The confession hung in the air. Jordan's face crumbled. Mother, what have you done? But Lola wasn't listening anymore. The wolf inside her was done being patient. It's time, the ancient voice whispered. Let me show them what they tried to destroy. Lola's bones began to break in earnest. Usually, the first shift was agony. Wolves screamed for hours as their human bodies tore apart and reformed. The lucky ones passed out from the pain. But Lola didn't scream. She threw her head back and roared. The sound was primal, inhuman, echoing across the training grounds and into the forest beyond. Birds exploded from trees, small animals fled, and every wolf in Silvercrest felt their blood turn to ice. That wasn't the roar of a wolf. That was the roar of a god. Golden light exploded from Lola's body in a pillar that shot straight into the storm clouds above. Thunder cracked. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminated gold instead of white. The rain intensified, but it evaporated before it could touch her, creating a dome of steam and light. Inside that dome, Lola's human form dissolved. Her spine lengthened, her limbs restructured. Fur erupted across her skin, not gray or brown or black like normal wolves, but shimmering metallic white tipped with gold. It looked like she was wearing armor made of starlight. Her face elongated into a muzzle lined with ivory fangs the size of daggers. Her hands and feet became massive paws, claws that could rend steel extending from them. And she grew, and grew, and grew. When the light finally faded and the steam cleared, a wolf stood on the execution platform. But calling it a wolf was like calling the ocean a puddle. She was massive, easily 10 feet tall at the shoulder, dwarfing even the largest alpha wolves. Her fur rippled with golden light, each strand seeming to generate its own luminescence. Her eyes were twin suns, blazing with intelligence and rage and power that made the air itself feel heavy. The Golden Luna, the avatar of the moon goddess, the rarest, most powerful creature in werewolf history, and Jordan had tried to kill her. The massive wolf turned her head, those burning eyes focusing on the alpha of Silvercrest. When she opened her muzzle, teeth like swords gleaming, a single word echoed in every mind present. Bow. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a command. It was gravity. Jordan's knees buckled. He tried to resist his alpha pride screaming at him to stand, to fight, to assert dominance, but his body wouldn't obey. Fenris had completely taken over his motor functions, forcing him down, down, down until his forehead pressed into the mud. Around him, 300 wolves collapsed as one. Warriors, hunters, healers. Omegas, it didn't matter. They all fell, prostrate before the golden wolf, unable to even lift their heads. Only one person remained standing. Roseanne, trembling and pale, had managed to resist the command through sheer terror. She backed away slowly, her eyes wide. This isn't possible. This can't be. The golden wolf's gaze shifted to her. Roseanne stopped breathing. You wanted to be Luna. The wolf's voice resonated in her skull. You wanted power. You wanted him. The massive head gestured toward Jordan's prostrate form. You killed his sister. You framed me. You smiled as I was dragged to my execution. I never. Roseanne's lies died on her tongue. The golden wolf's presence made deception impossible. The truth was pulled from her like drawing poison from a wound. Fine. Yes. Roseanne screamed. I did it. Miriam and I planned it together. Cassidy found out about the suppression spells and threatened to expose us. We couldn't let her tell Jordan. And you, she jabbed a finger at the wolf. You were always in the way. The pathetic wolfless girl he was supposedly mated to. Even without a wolf, he looked at you with love, the wolf finished. He looked at me with love when we were children, before you poisoned him with lies. Before his mother convinced him I was weak. Roseanne's face twisted. You were weak. You deserve to die. The golden wolf moved. She didn't attack, not really. She simply stepped down from the platform, each pawfall shaking the ground. She walked up to Roseanne, towering over her, and lowered her massive head until they were eye to eye. I am going to give you a gift, the wolf said. The same gift you wanted to give me. Nothing. The wolf's eyes flared. Roseanne screamed. She clawed at her chest, at her throat, at her head. Inside her, something was being ripped away. Her wolf, her connection to the pack mind, her supernatural healing, all of it was being stripped from her soul. When the screaming stopped, Roseanne collapsed in a heap, still breathing but hollow. Her eyes were dull, her skin had lost its golden undertone. She looked human. She was human. The wolf had made her wolfless. The ultimate punishment for a supremacist who'd always looked down on the weak. Go, the wolf commanded. Walk into the human world you always despised. Live among them, die among them, and know that you did this to yourself. Roseanne sobbed, broken, unable to even stand. The golden wolf turned away from her, dismissing her as irrelevant. Her eyes swept across the prostrate pack, then settled back on Jordan. He was still on his knees, his head bowed, tears streaming down his face and mixing with the mud. Look at me, Jordan McBride. Slowly, painfully, fighting against every instinct screaming at him to keep his head down, Jordan raised his eyes. The wolf looked at him for a long moment. He felt her presence in his mind, sifting through his memories, his intentions, his regrets. It was intimate and invasive, and he couldn't stop it even if he wanted to. Finally, she spoke. I, Lola Richardson, reject Jordan McBride as my mate. I reject him as my alpha. I reject this pack and everything it represents. The bond between us is severed. The snap was audible, like a rope breaking under too much weight. Jordan opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The mate bond that mangled, broken thing was finally completely destroyed, and the pain was excruciating. He collapsed face first into the mud, convulsing as his soul tried to process the loss of something it had always known was there, even damaged. The golden wolf watched him writhe for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she turned and leaped. The force of her jump cracked the execution platform in half. She sailed over the crowd's heads, over the pack boundary, and into the dark forest beyond. No one tried to stop her. No one could. As her golden form disappeared into the trees, the crushing pressure of her aura finally lifted. Wolves gasped, gulping air, their bodies trembling from the strain. Jordan lay in the mud, broken and sobbing. His mother stood frozen, her secret exposed, her plan in ruins, and Roseanne, now utterly human, curled into a ball and wished she'd never been born. The wolfless girl was gone. The golden Luna had risen, and nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 3. When Gods Kneel. The dark forest had earned its name honestly. Even in daylight, the canopy was so thick that only scattered beams of sunlight penetrated to the forest floor. At night, it was absolute darkness broken only by the occasional glow of predator eyes. This was rogue territory, the dumping ground for the exiled, the violent, the wolves too broken or too dangerous for pack life. It was also where Lola found herself 3 days after her execution. She'd been running on instinct, her massive golden form covering miles in minutes. The wolf she'd learned her name was Valeriana, had guided them deeper and deeper into the wilderness, away from Silvercrest, away from Jordan, away from everything. But even gods needed rest. Lola had finally shifted back to human form in a small cave, her body exhausted from maintaining the transformation. Shifting back had been disorienting. One moment she was 10 feet of golden power, the next she was a naked, shivering 20-year-old girl covered in mud and her own sweat. You'll get used to it, Valeriana had said in her mind before retreating to a quiet corner of Lola's consciousness. Rest now. We're not safe yet. That had been 2 days ago. Lola had managed to find a stream, wash herself, and fashion crude clothing from large leaves and vines. She felt ridiculous, but it was better than nothing. She'd caught fish with her bare hands, her reflexes now supernaturally fast even in human form, and she'd walked, heading nowhere in particular, just away. But the dark forest wasn't empty. She'd felt them watching her for the last 6 hours. Eyes in the shadows. Footsteps that stopped when she stopped. The rustle of movement just out of sight. Rogues. As the sun set on her third day of freedom, they finally showed themselves. Lola stood in a small clearing beside a creek, drinking water from her cupped hands, when the first wolf emerged from the tree line. He was massive and gray, with mange eating away patches of his fur. One ear was torn completely off, leaving a jagged stump. His eyes were yellow and bloodshot, and saliva dripped from his jowls as he stared at her with naked hunger. Valeriana, Lola thought urgently. I need you. Not yet, the golden wolf replied calmly. Let's see how many there are first. More wolves emerged. A scarred brown female with a twisted back leg. A black male missing his right eye. A small, sickly-looking russet wolf that was all ribs and desperation. By the time they stopped appearing, 12 rogues surrounded her, forming a loose circle. They looked nothing like the sleek, well-fed warriors of Silvercrest. These were the cast-offs, the survivors, the wolves that hunger and madness had reduced to shadows of what they once were. The gray wolf with the missing ear stepped forward. He didn't shift to human form, most rogues couldn't, too far gone to maintain the control shifting required. Instead, he just growled, low and menacing. Lola stood slowly, water dripping from her hands. I don't want trouble, she said clearly. I'm just passing through. The gray wolf snarled. The others began to circle closer, their paws silent on the forest floor. They didn't see a golden Luna. They saw a young human woman, alone and vulnerable. They saw fresh meat. Now? Lola asked Valeriana. Now. The shift happened faster this time. Lola had learned from the first transformation. Instead of fighting it, she surrendered to it. Her bones rearranged with barely a crackle, her body expanding smoothly, golden fur erupting across her skin like wildfire. 3 seconds. That's all it took. 1 moment. A girl stood in the clearing. The next, the golden Luna towered over them all, her eyes blazing like twin suns. The gray wolf froze mid-lunge, his paws skidding in the dirt. The other rogues stopped circling, their mouths falling open in shock. Lola lowered her massive head and growled. It wasn't loud, she didn't need volume. The sound resonated in their bones, in their very DNA, triggering responses that evolution had coded into them over millennia. This was not prey. This was an apex predator. The gray wolf's bravado crumbled, his ears flattened against his skull, his tail tucked between his legs, and slowly, whining, he lowered himself to his belly in submission. The other rogues followed suit, one by one dropping to the ground, exposing their throats. All except one. The russet wolf, the small, sickly one, remained standing. But not in defiance. He was trembling so hard his legs could barely support him, tears streaming from his eyes. Lola tilted her head, studying him. There was something different about this one. Through Valeriana's enhanced senses, she could feel his mind. It was fractured, breaking apart, teetering on the edge of the feral drift, the madness that consumed rogues cut off from pack bonds. He was dying. Not physically, but mentally. His wolf was eating his human consciousness from the inside out. He's so young, Valeriana whispered sadly. Barely 18. He doesn't deserve this. Can we help him? Lola asked. We can try. Lola shifted her attention fully to the russet wolf. She took a step closer, and he flinched, but didn't run. Up close, she could see the intelligence still flickering in his eyes, fighting to stay alive against the encroaching madness. She did something purely on instinct. She pressed her massive forehead against his smaller one. Golden light flowed from her into him. The russet wolf gasped, his eyes widening. Inside his mind, Lola felt Valeriana's power wrap around his fractured consciousness like a bandage, holding the pieces together, pushing back the feral drift. When she pulled away, the russet wolf collapsed, unconscious but breathing steadily. The trembling had stopped. His breathing was even. Lola looked at the other rogues, still prostrate around her. Through the pack bond she could feel emanating from her, a bond she hadn't asked for but apparently came with being a golden Luna. She sensed their exhaustion, their pain, their desperate fight against madness. They're all suffering, she realized. Being cut off from a pack mind is killing them slowly. Yes, Valeriana confirmed. Wolves are not meant to be alone. Without an alpha's anchor, without pack bonds to stabilize them, they eventually lose themselves. That's why rogues are dangerous. They're not evil. They're drowning. Can we help all of them? We can. But it will cost us energy. And it will bind them to us. Lola looked at the 12 broken wolves surrounding her. They hadn't chosen this life. Most had probably been exiled for crimes they committed while already half mad from isolation. They were victims as much as villains. Do it, Lola decided. Valeriana didn't argue. The golden light that had flowed into the russet wolf now expanded outward, washing over all 12 rogues like a wave. They gasped as one, their eyes rolling back. Lola felt their minds connect to hers, not fully. Not like a traditional pack bond where the alpha controlled everything, but more like a network. They could feel her presence, stable and strong, anchoring them to sanity. And she could feel them. Their relief, their gratitude, their wonder. The feral drift stopped. When the light faded, the rogues slowly rose to their feet. They looked different already. Eyes clearer, posture straighter, the desperation replaced with something like hope. The gray wolf shifted to human form. He was a middle-aged man, scarred and weathered, with short gray hair and the stump of his missing ear visible. He fell to his knees, not in submission this time, but in genuine reverence. "My name is Tommy Blake," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "I was exiled from the Northern Ridge Pack 15 years ago for killing a warrior who attacked my daughter. I've been alone ever since." Tears streamed down his weathered face. "The silence in my head. It's gone. I can think clearly for the first time in a decade. Whatever you are, whoever you are, thank you." The others shifted one by one, revealing their human forms. A woman in her 30s missing 2 fingers. A teenage boy with burn scars covering half his body. An elderly man who looked too thin to be alive. All of them knelt. All of them wept. "What do we call you?" Tommy asked, his voice shaking. Lola shifted back to human form, suddenly very aware that she was still wearing leaf clothes and probably looked ridiculous. But the rogues didn't seem to care. "My name is Lola," she said quietly, "and I don't want you to kneel. I didn't save you so you'd worship me. I saved you because it was the right thing to do. But you're a golden Luna," the woman with missing fingers whispered. "The legends say—" "I don't care what the legends say." Lola's voice was firm. "I'm not a goddess. I'm just someone who spent her whole life being treated like garbage for something she couldn't control. I won't do that to others." The rogue stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. Tommy slowly stood. "Then, what do you want from us?" "Nothing," Lola said. "You're free. Go wherever you want. I couldn't leave you like that." Before Tommy could respond, a new voice cut through the clearing. "How very noble of you." Every head turned. A man stood at the edge of the clearing, leaning casually against a tree. He hadn't been there a moment ago. He'd appeared absolutely silently, which should have been impossible. Lola should have heard him, smelled him, sensed him. But this man had somehow bypassed all of that. He was tall, easily matching Jordan's height, with broad shoulders and a build that spoke of brutal efficiency rather than show. His hair was jet black and long, tied back loosely. His face was rugged and mapped with scars, the most prominent a jagged white line running from his left eyebrow down to his jaw, narrowly missing his eye. He wore simple, dark leather armor that looked worn and functional. At his hip hung a sword that looked ancient and deadly. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, gray with flecks of silver, and when they locked onto Lola, she felt Valeriana stir uneasily. "Who is he?" Lola asked. "Trouble," Valeriana replied. The man pushed off the tree and walked toward them with the lazy confidence of an apex predator. The rogues scrambled backward, their newfound stability evaporating in the face of pure instinct. "Easy," the man said, his voice a low rumble. "I'm not here for them." His eyes never left Lola. "I'm here for the star that fell into my forest." Tommy found his voice. "Lord Calvin, we didn't know she was." "Lord?" Lola interrupted. The man smiled, one side of his scarred mouth lifting. "They're being dramatic. I'm not a lord. I'm just the only thing keeping them alive out here." He stopped 10 feet from Lola, looking her up and down without an ounce of the reverence the rogues had shown. "I'm Calvin Benjamin, and you, Golden Luna. are standing in my territory. Valeriana growled inside Lola's mind. He should be bowing. Why isn't he bowing? But Calvin didn't bow. He didn't even look particularly impressed. He just studied her with those storm-gray eyes, his expression unreadable. You're the rogue king, Lola said slowly, pieces clicking together. The one the council fears. Guilty. Calvin tilted his head. And you're the wolfless girl from Silvercrest. Though clearly, that reputation was somewhat inaccurate. How do you know who I am? I have scouts in every pack within 200 miles. I knew about your execution an hour after it was scheduled. He glanced at the rogues, who were still cowering. Go. All of you. Back to camp. Tell Juan I'll be along shortly. The rogues hesitated, looking at Lola. Go, she confirmed softly. I'll be fine. They scattered into the forest, leaving Lola alone with the Rogue King. Calvin waited until their footsteps faded before speaking again. You reek of rejection. Fresh too. Let me guess the Alpha realized what he'd done and you told him to go to hell? Something like that. Good. Jordan McBride is an idiot. Calvin circled her slowly, not threatening, just assessing. Rejecting a mate is one thing. Trying to execute a golden Luna? That's a special kind of stupid. You don't seem very impressed, Lola observed. By your power? I'm terrified. He said it so casually it took her a moment to process. You could probably snap me like a twig. But fear and respect aren't the same thing. And I don't give respect just because someone's powerful. I give it when it's earned. Valeriana was bristling. He's challenging us. We should put him in his place. No, Lola thought back. I'm tired of dominance games. If he's not attacking, neither am I. Calvin stopped circling, facing her directly. You're far from home, Golden Luna. You're exhausted. You're dressed in leaves. A tiny smile. And you have nowhere to go. Silvercrest will hunt you to try and fix their Alpha's mistake. The council will want to cage you for study. And the other packs will want to claim you as a weapon. So I'm offering you sanctuary. Lola blinked. Why? Because that pack of rogues you just saved? Calvin gestured toward where they'd disappeared. They're 12 of my 300. All of them have been suffering from feral drift for years. Some of them I've had to chain up to keep them from hurting themselves. His storm-gray eyes softened just slightly. You walked into my forest and in 5 minutes did something I've been trying to do for a decade. You gave them peace. I didn't do it for you. I know. That's why I'm asking. Calvin took a step closer, close enough that she could smell cedar wood and dark soil. Stay. Let me teach you to fight, because right now, all you have is power. You don't have skill. And when Jordan comes for you, and he will come, you'll need both. And what do you get out of this? Lola asked suspiciously. Calvin's smile widened, showing teeth. A fighting chance. If a golden Luna bonds with my court, the feral drift ends for all of them. They stop being broken rogues and start being an army. And with an army, he paused. I can finally do what I came here to do, tear down the council's corrupt system and build something better. It was the most honest manipulation Lola had ever heard. You're asking me to be your weapon, she said flatly. I'm asking you to be my partner. Calvin extended his hand, palm up. I don't want to own you. I want to fight beside you. The council that would cage you is the same council that exiles innocence. Jordan's pack that tried to kill you is the same pack structure that punishes weakness and worships power. His gray eyes blazed. Help me burn it all down and build something that doesn't grind people into dust. Lola stared at his offered hand. He's dangerous, Valeriana warned. More dangerous than Jordan ever was. I know, Lola thought. But he's also honest. And he's offering us what no one else ever did. What's that? A choice. Slowly, Lola reached out and placed her hand in Calvin's. His fingers closed around hers, warm, calloused, steady. Welcome to the dark forest, Calvin said, that terrifying smile still playing on his scarred face. My queen. And for the first time since her wolf had awakened, Lola smiled back. Chapter 4. The Alpha's Descent. Jordan McBride hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, Lola, kneeling at the execution block, her hazel eyes filled with betrayal. Lola, transforming into a creature of myth and legend while he stood frozen. Lola, rejecting him with words that had torn his soul apart. The Alpha's quarters felt like a tomb. He sat in the dark, a bottle of whiskey half empty on the table beside him, staring at nothing. The mate bond was gone, completely severed. Where there had always been a faint tug, even damaged, even rejected 3 times, it had still been there now. There was just emptiness. A black hole in his chest that nothing could fill. Fenris was silent. His wolf, usually so dominant and aggressive, had retreated deep into Jordan's psyche and refused to emerge. The shame was too great. They had tried to execute their mate, their queen. A knock on the door made him flinch. "Go away," Jordan rasped. The door opened anyway. Henry Matthews, head warrior and one of Jordan's oldest friends, stepped inside. He took one look at the Alpha, unshaven, disheveled, reeking of alcohol and despair, and his face tightened. "You need to get up," Henry said quietly. "I said go away. The pack is falling apart, Jordan." Henry crossed the room and yanked open the curtains. Afternoon sunlight streamed in, making Jordan wince. Half the wolves want to hunt Lola down and beg her forgiveness. The other half are terrified she'll come back and slaughter us all. Your mother is in the dungeons screaming about injustice. Roseanne is catatonic in the healer's ward. And you're in here drinking yourself to death. Good. Jordan took another swig from the bottle. "I deserve it." Henry snatched the bottle away. "You're the Alpha. Act like it." "I'm not fit to be Alpha," Jordan roared, surging to his feet. The movement made his head spin, but rage kept him upright. "I sentenced an innocent woman to death. I rejected my true mate 3 times. I let my mother murder my sister and frame someone else for it. What kind of Alpha does that?" "A blind one," Henry said harshly. "A stupid one. But you're still breathing, which means you still have a chance to fix it." "There's no fixing this." Jordan slumped back into his chair. "She rejected me. The bond is gone. She's gone. Then go after her." Jordan laughed bitterly. "And say what?" "Sorry I tried to behead you. Please take me back." "She's a golden Luna, Henry. She doesn't need me. She doesn't need anyone." Henry was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled up a chair and sat down, forcing Jordan to look at him. "When we were kids," Henry said slowly, "do you remember what Lola used to do every morning?" Jordan frowned. "What?" "She'd bring you breakfast. Every single morning from when we were 8 until you rejected her at 17. She'd wake up early, help the Omegas cook, and bring you a plate, even after you started treating her like garbage. She still did it. For 9 years. Jordan's throat tightened. "She tutored my little brother in mathematics when he was failing," Henry continued. "She helped Ruth with her healing herbs even though Ruth testified against her. She never missed a pack run, even though she couldn't shift and had to follow on foot." His voice hardened. "Lola spent 20 years trying to be worthy of a pack that treated her like trash. And you spent 20 years proving you weren't worthy of her." The words hit like physical blows. "So yes," Henry said, standing up. "You're a blind, stupid Alpha who made the worst mistake of his life. But Lola deserves to hear you say it to her face. She deserves a real apology, not you wallowing in here feeling sorry for yourself." He walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. "Your mother's trial is in 1 hour. The pack expects you to preside. After that, you're going to the Dark Forest. Calvin Benjamin will kill me on sight. Then you'll die apologizing to your mate. Better than dying drunk in the dark." Henry left, closing the door behind him. Jordan sat in silence for a long moment. Then, slowly, he dragged himself to his feet and stumbled toward the bathroom. His reflection in the mirror was a stranger, hollow-eyed, gaunt, broken. On his bare chest, 3 rejection scars burned red and angry. They were marks of shame, visible to any wolf, proof that he'd rejected his fated mate multiple times. But beneath those 3 scars, a 4th mark was forming. It was gold, shimmering and painful, etching itself into his skin like a brand. Jordan traced it with shaking fingers. He'd heard of these marks in old stories. When an Alpha rejected or harmed a golden Luna, the moon goddess herself would mark them. Unworthy, it read in the old tongue. Jordan closed his eyes, letting the shame wash over him. Then he turned on the shower and began to clean himself up. The pack gathered in the central clearing an hour later. 300 wolves, silent and tense, formed a circle around a wooden platform that had been erected hastily. Jordan stood on the platform, clean-shaven and dressed in his ceremonial alpha robes. He looked like an alpha again. But inside, he felt like a hollow shell. On her knees in the center of the platform, bound in silver chains, was Luna Miriam McBride. His mother looked smaller than he remembered. Older. Her silver hair hung in tangles around her face, and her eyes, once so commanding, were wild with desperation. "This is a farce," she hissed as Jordan approached. "I am Luna of this pack. You cannot put me on trial. You murdered Cassidy." Jordan's voice was flat, emotionless. "You framed an innocent woman. You poisoned Lola for 20 years to suppress her wolf. You conspired with Roseanne to destroy the mate the moon goddess chose for me." He looked down at her without recognition. "You're not my Luna. You're not my mother. You're a murderer." Miriam laughed, the sound brittle and manic. "I did it for you. Don't you understand? A golden Luna would have destroyed everything. She would have taken your power, your authority, your pack. I was protecting you." "From what?" Jordan roared. "From my mate? From happiness? From the one person who actually loved me despite what a bastard I was?" He turned to the pack. "My mother stands accused of murder, conspiracy, and crimes against the moon goddess herself. The evidence is irrefutable. The confession is recorded. How do you judge her?" The pack's response was immediate and unanimous. "Guilty, guilty, guilty." Miriam's face went white. "Jordan, please. I'm your mother. You can't. The punishment for regicide is death," Jordan said coldly. "But I'm not going to kill you. That would be mercy." He gestured to Henry. "Strip her of her title. Remove her wolf. Exile her to the human world." Miriam screamed. "No. Anything but that. Kill me, Jordan. Please." But Jordan had already turned away, as Henry and 2 other warriors dragged her toward Ruth, the pack healer. Ruth held a ceremonial dagger, her face grim. The ritual was brutal. Jordan didn't watch. He couldn't. Even after everything she'd done, she was still the woman who'd raised him. Hearing her screams as her wolf was ripped away was punishment enough. When the screaming finally stopped, Henry approached. "It's done," he said quietly. "She's human now. We'll take her to the border and release her." Jordan nodded numbly. "Good. And Rosen?" "Still hasn't spoken. The healers say she's in shock from losing her wolf so suddenly." Henry paused. "What do you want to do with her?" "Exile her too. She can follow my mother into the human world. They can suffer together." "And you?" Jordan took a deep breath. "Gather a scouting party. 5 of our best warriors. We leave for the dark forest at dawn. Calvin Benjamin has 300 rogues under his command," Henry warned. "Even with our best fighters, we're outnumbered." "I'm not going to fight." Jordan touched the golden scar on his chest. "I'm going to kneel at his gate and beg for an audience with Lola. If she grants it, I apologize. If she doesn't," he shrugged, "then I deserve whatever happens." Henry studied him for a long moment. "You know she might kill you." "I know. And you're going anyway. I owe her that much." Jordan's voice cracked slightly. "I owe her everything." That night Jordan stood in what had been Lola's room. It wasn't really a room, more of a storage closet that had been converted into living space. A narrow cot with a thin blanket. A single shelf holding a few worn books. A cracked mirror on the wall. This was where his mate had lived for 20 years. While he'd slept in luxury, she'd had this. Jordan sat on the cot. It creaked under his weight, the frame bent and weak. On the shelf, he found a journal, cheap paper bound with string. He opened it, knowing he shouldn't, but unable to stop himself. The entries were dated, starting from when Lola was 13. Today Jordan smiled at me during training. He didn't say anything, but the smile was enough. Maybe he'll accept the mate bond when we're older. Maybe he'll love me. Jordan's hands shook. He flipped forward. Jordan rejected me today. He said I was weak. He said the bond was a mistake. It hurt so much I couldn't breathe. But I know he didn't mean it. He's under so much pressure as Alpha. I just need to be patient. Further. He rejected me again. This time in front of the whole pack. Luna Miriam told me I should leave Silvercrest, that I'm an embarrassment to Jordan. But I can't leave. He's my mate. The moon goddess chose us. I just need to prove I'm worthy. And further, I don't think he'll ever love me. I've accepted that, but maybe I can still help him. I can still be useful to the pack. Even without a wolf, I can still contribute. That has to be enough. That has to mean something. The final entry was dated the day before her execution. Tomorrow they're going to kill me. I'm innocent, but no one believes me. Jordan won't even look at me anymore. I'm so tired. I've spent my whole life trying to be enough, and it was never enough. If there's another life after this, I hope I'm born with a wolf. I hope I'm born strong. I hope I'm born worthy of love. Jordan closed the journal carefully. Then he buried his face in his hands and wept. He cried for the girl who'd brought him breakfast every morning, for the teenager who'd loved him despite his cruelty, for the woman who'd gone to her execution believing she was worthless. He cried until his throat was raw and his eyes burned. Then he stood, placed the journal carefully back on the shelf, and left the room. At dawn, he would go to the dark forest. He would kneel at Calvin Benjamin's gate. And he would beg the Golden Luna for forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. It was the least he could do. It was all he had left. Chapter 5. Queen of the Forsaken. 3 weeks in the dark forest changed Lola in ways she couldn't have imagined. The rogue settlement wasn't the lawless wasteland she'd expected. It was a functioning community, crude and rough around the edges, but organized. Cabins built from salvaged wood dotted the forest floor. A central fire pit served as gathering place and kitchen. Children played under the watchful eyes of Omega caretakers. Warriors trained in a cleared area, their movements efficient and brutal. It was a pack. Just one the council refused to acknowledge. Calvin's main dwelling was built into the side of a cliff overlooking the valley. It was larger than the others, but not by much, functional rather than ostentatious. He'd given Lola his bed that first night, insisting he'd sleep on the floor. She'd argued. He'd won by simply lying down on the floor and closing his eyes while she was mid-sentence. Now, 3 weeks later, they'd fallen into a rhythm. Lola woke before dawn. The golden wolf inside her didn't need much sleep. Valeriana was always alert, always aware. She'd learned to meditate, to sink into that space where human and wolf coexisted peacefully, sharing the same mind without fighting for control. Then came training. Calvin was a brutal teacher. Again, he barked as Lola picked herself up from the dirt for the 15th time that morning. They were in the training yard, surrounded by a circle of watching rogues. Lola was in human form, wearing simple leather pants and a wrapped chest binding Calvin had provided. Her opponent was a massive warrior named Tomas Osborne, 7 feet of solid muscle covered in scars. "I'm trying," Lola panted, wiping blood from her split lip. "Trying isn't enough." Calvin leaned against a tree, arms crossed. "You've got the most powerful wolf on the planet inside you. But right now, in human form, you fight like someone who's never been in a real battle, because you haven't. I know how to fight. I trained with Silvercrest." "You trained to lose," Calvin interrupted. "They put you with the Omegas and taught you basic self-defense. That's not combat. That's survival. There's a difference." Tomas rumbled his agreement. He was mute, his vocal cords had been damaged in whatever incident had gotten him exiled, but his meaning was clear. "Combat is about ending the threat." Calvin continued. "You don't fight to defend, you fight to win, now again. And this time stop pulling your punches, Tomas can take it." Lola squared her stance, facing the giant warrior. Her body ached. She'd been training for 6 hours straight, and even with Valeriana's enhanced healing, she felt every bruise and scrape. But she understood what Calvin was doing. He was teaching her that power without skill was just flailing. Valeriana could destroy armies in wolf form, but Lola needed to be able to protect herself as a human too. Tomas moved first, his massive fist arcing toward her face. This time, Lola didn't try to block. She slipped sideways, letting his momentum carry him forward, and drove her elbow into his kidney. Tomas grunted the first sound of pain she'd gotten from him. Better, Calvin called. But you're still hesitating. You had an opening for his throat and you took his kidney instead. Why? I didn't want to hurt him badly. He's trying to kill you, Lola. In training, sure, he'll stop before actual damage. But in a real fight, your enemies won't show mercy. Neither should you. Tomas came at her again. Faster this time. Lola ducked under his swing, hooked her foot behind his knee, and yanked. The giant warrior went down hard, and Lola pounced, her hand at his throat before she'd consciously decided to move. Tomas tapped the ground twice. Yield. The watching rogues burst into applause and howls. Calvin pushed off the tree, a slight smile playing on his scarred face. Now that's more like it. He offered Lola a hand up. You're learning. Lola took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. His grip was warm, calloused, steady. I'm learning that you're a sadist, she grumbled. That too. He didn't let go of her hand immediately. But you're getting stronger. 3 weeks ago, Tomas would have flattened you in seconds. 3 weeks ago, I'd never thrown a real punch in my life. And now you're dangerous. Calvin's storm gray eyes held hers. In another month, you'll be deadly. Something in his tone made heat curl in Lola's stomach. She pulled her hand away, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing, how his shirt was open at the collar, revealing a slice of scarred chest, how he smelled like cedar wood and leather and, oh no, Valeriana purred in her mind. We're in trouble. Shut up, Lola thought back. Calvin, oblivious to her internal panic, turned to address the watching crowd. That's enough for today. Tomas, good work. Lola, rest for a few hours. Then we're working on your command voice. My what? Your alpha command. You used it once during your transformation, but you haven't accessed it since. We need to train it. He glanced at her. A Golden Luna's command is different from a normal alpha's. It's not just powerful, it's absolute. But if you can't control it, you'll either burn yourself out or accidentally dominate someone you don't mean to. Lola nodded. She'd felt the command that day at her execution, the overwhelming force that had dropped 300 wolves to their knees. The power had been intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Go clean up, Calvin said. There's a hot spring about half a mile north. Juan will show you the way. The hot spring was hidden in a grove of ancient pines, steam rising from the water in ghostly wisps. Juan Crowley, Calvin's second in command and a cheerful man despite the burn scars covering half his body, had led Lola there and then tactfully disappeared. Lola sank into the water with a groan of relief. The heat worked into her sore muscles, easing the tension. She floated on her back, staring up at the canopy, and let her mind wander. 3 weeks. She'd been in the dark forest for 3 weeks, and already it felt more like home than Silvercrest ever had. The rogues didn't treat her like a goddess. They treated her like Lola. They asked her opinion on things. They laughed at her jokes. They didn't bow unless it was formal occasions, and even then, it felt respectful rather than fearful. And Calvin was complicated. He pushed her during training, never accepting less than her best. But he also sat with her by the fire at night, teaching her the pack's history, explaining the politics of the supernatural world. He was brutally honest, sometimes to the point of rudeness, but he'd never once lied to her. He didn't worship her power, he challenged it. And somehow, that made her want to be around him more, not less. You're falling for him, Valeriana observed. I am not. Your heart rate increases when he's near. Your scent changes. You stare at his hands when he's explaining combat techniques. I do not, Lola paused. Do I really stare at his hands? Constantly. It's embarrassing. Lola dunked her head under water to hide her flush, even though no one was around to see it. When she surfaced, she wasn't alone anymore. Calvin stood at the edge of the spring, his back to her, holding a bundle of clean clothes. Sorry. Didn't mean to intrude. Juan said you'd been gone a while, so I brought you something to change into. Lola sank lower in the water, suddenly very aware of her nakedness. Thanks. You can just leave them on that rock. Calvin set the clothes down, but instead of leaving, He sat on a boulder near the water's edge, still with his back to her, giving her privacy. We need to talk about what happens next. What do you mean? You've been here 3 weeks. The pack is stabilizing. None of my rogues have shown signs of feral drift since you arrived. You're learning combat, but you can't hide forever. He was quiet for a moment. Jordan McBride is coming. Lola's stomach dropped. How do you know? My scouts spotted Silvercrest warriors at the border 2 days ago. Small scouting party, only 5 wolves. And Jordan himself, riding at the front. Calvin's voice was carefully neutral. He's been camped at our gate for 48 hours now, kneeling. No weapons. Waiting for permission to enter. Lola's breath caught. He's kneeling? For 2 days straight. No food, no water, no shelter. Just kneeling in the mud. Waiting for you to grant him an audience. He's suffering, Valeriana whispered, and there was something almost sad in her tone. The bond is severed, but the guilt is eating him alive. I don't want to see him, Lola said, but her voice lacked conviction. That's your choice, Calvin said. I can send him away. I can kill him if you want, though. That would probably start a war. Or, he paused. You can face him. Let him say whatever he came to say. Then decide what you want to do. What do you think I should do? Calvin was silent for a long moment. I think closure is important. I think you spent 20 years loving someone who hurt you, and you deserve to hear him grovel. I think, he trailed off. What? I think I'm biased, he admitted. Because the idea of you going back to him makes me want to tear something apart. But that's my problem. Not yours. Lola's heart stuttered. Calvin. Don't. He stood abruptly. Don't address it right now. You've got enough to deal with. He started walking away, then paused. For what it's worth. You're not the wolfless girl anymore, Lola. You don't owe Jordan anything. Whatever you decide, make sure it's what you want. Not what you think you should do. Not what he wants. What you want. He disappeared into the trees before she could respond. Lola floated in the hot spring for a long time after that, her mind churning. Jordan was here, kneeling at the gate like a supplicant. The alpha who'd rejected her 3 times was now begging for her attention. 3 weeks ago, that would have been everything she'd ever wanted. Now, she wasn't sure what she felt. We should see him, Valeriana said finally. Not because we owe him anything, but because we need to know if there's anything left to salvage. And if there's not, the golden wolf's presence felt like a warm embrace. Then we can walk away knowing we gave him the chance he never gave us. Lola climbed out of the water and dressed in the clothes Calvin had brought, dark pants and a soft tunic that fit perfectly. He'd even included boots. As she walked back toward the settlement, her mind was made up. She would see Jordan, she would let him speak, and then she would make her choice, not as his mate, not as his Luna, as herself. Chapter 6. The Alpha, Who Fell. The gates of the dark forest settlement were less gates and more symbolic markers, 2 massive tree trunks carved with rogue sigils, standing sentinel at the main path. They marked the boundary between the wild forest and the claimed territory of Calvin's court. Jordan McBride had been kneeling in front of those gates for 48 hours. The rain had started on the first night and hadn't stopped. It soaked through his clothes, turned the ground beneath him into freezing mud, and plastered his hair to his face. He didn't move, didn't seek shelter, didn't shift to his more resilient wolf form. This was penance, and penance required suffering. Behind him, camped at a respectful distance, were the 5 warriors he'd brought. Henry Matthews and 4 others, all loyal, all worried about their alpha's deteriorating condition. He's going to die if he stays out here much longer, one of them muttered, a young warrior named Christopher Dyer. Henry didn't respond. He just kept watching Jordan's motionless form. The rogues watched too. They lined the settlement side of the gate, dozens of them, staring at the alpha who'd come unarmed and alone. Some looked curious, others looked hostile, a few looked almost pitying. On the 3rd morning, as weak sunlight finally broke through the clouds, the crowd of rogues parted. Lola walked through. Jordan didn't see her at first. His head was bowed, his eyes closed, his entire body trembling from exhaustion and cold. He was deep in meditation, using every ounce of his alpha willpower to keep himself upright. Then he felt it, that phantom sensation where the mate bond used to be. Not the bond itself that was gone, but the echo of it, the muscle memory of connection. His eyes opened slowly. Lola stood 10 feet away, flanked by Calvin on one side and Juan on the other. She wore dark leather armor that fit her like a second skin, her hair braided back in a warrior's style. She looked strong, healthy, powerful. She looked nothing like the girl he'd sentenced to death. Jordan's breath caught. Behind her, the golden Luna's presence radiated like heat from a forge. Even suppressed, even controlled, he could feel the weight of her power pressing down on him. It made his knees ache to stay locked, made every instinct scream at him to drop fully prostrate. But he'd promised himself he wouldn't move until she acknowledged him. Lola studied him with eyes that revealed nothing. "You've been kneeling for 2 days." "Yes." Jordan's voice was hoarse from disuse. "Why?" "Because I need to speak with you. And I have no right to demand your time." He swallowed hard. "So I wait until you choose to grant it." Calvin made a sound that might have been a scoff. "Poetic. 3 weeks ago, you were going to behead her. Now you're playing the humble supplicant." Jordan's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. He kept his eyes on Lola. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to apologize." "Apologize?" Lola's voice was flat. "You think an apology fixes this?" "No." Jordan finally let his gaze drop. "Nothing fixes this, but you deserve to hear it anyway." Lola was quiet for a long moment, then she gestured to Calvin and Juan. "Leave us." Calvin frowned. "Lola, I'll be fine." Her tone brooked no argument. "If he tries anything, you'll hear me scream from here to the Capitol." Calvin looked like he wanted to argue further, but finally nodded. He and Juan retreated, though not far. They positioned themselves just inside the gate, close enough to intervene if needed. Lola walked closer to Jordan, stopping just outside his reach. "Stand up." Jordan tried. His legs locked in position for 2 days, barely responded. He managed to rise halfway before his knees buckled. Lola caught him. The contact was electric. Her hands on his arms, steadying him, and for a moment, they both froze. Up close, Jordan could see the changes in her. There were faint scars on her hands from training. Her eyes, while still hazel in human form, had flecks of gold that hadn't been there before. She smelled different too, wild, like pine and rain and something ancient. She smelled like power. "When's the last time you ate?" Lola asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Before I left Silvercrest. 3 days ago. Maybe 4. Time had blurred." She sighed. "You're an idiot." But she helped him to a nearby log, letting him sit. She remained standing, maintaining the distance and height advantage. "Talk. You have 5 minutes." Jordan took a shaky breath. Where did he even start? How did he condense 20 years of mistakes into 5 minutes? "I was wrong," he began. "About everything. About you. About the mate bond. About what strength means." He looked up at her. "My mother poisoned you for 20 years to suppress your wolf. She murdered Cassidy when my sister discovered the truth. She and Roseanne framed you because they feared what you'd become." "I know all this," Lola said coldly. "Calvin's spies are very efficient. But I didn't know. And that's not an excuse, it's an explanation. I should have questioned. I should have investigated. I should have listened to you." His voice cracked. "Instead, I was so focused on proving I was a strong alpha that I became a blind one. You rejected me 3 times. I know. You called the mate bond a mistake. I know. You stood there and watched while they chained me. While they dragged me to the execution block. While the crowd screamed for my blood." Lola's voice remained steady, but her hands had clenched into fists. "You gave the order to drop the axe, Jordan. You tried to kill me." "I know." Tears streamed down Jordan's face now, unchecked. "I know. And I will carry that guilt until the day I die. I rejected the greatest gift the moon goddess could have given me. I tried to destroy something precious because I was too arrogant to see its value. He touched his chest where the golden scar burned. I'm marked. Unworthy. And I deserve it. Lola's expression flickered just for a moment with something that might have been sympathy. Why are you here, Jordan? What do you want from me? Nothing, he said immediately. I don't. I'm not here to ask you to take me back. The bond is severed. I know that can't be repaired. He struggled to find the words. I needed you to know that I'm sorry, that I was wrong, that you were always worthy. I was the one who wasn't. That's it? You kneel in the mud for 2 days just to apologize? You deserved a real apology, not me wallowing in self-pity in my quarters. You deserved to hear it to your face. Jordan wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. And I brought you something. A peace offering. He reached into his jacket, moving slowly so Calvin and Juan wouldn't think he was drawing a weapon, and pulled out a small wooden box. Lola eyed it suspiciously. What is it? Evidence. Everything we found after you left. My mother's journals detailing the suppression spells. The Wolfsbane supplier's receipts. The blood analysis proving Cassidy's murder. He offered it to her. I've already executed the sentence for my mother and Roseanne. They're exiled to the human world, stripped of their wolves. But if you want to bring additional charges to the council, this evidence is yours. Lola took the box slowly, opening it. Inside were documents, sealed vials, and what looked like a dried flower pressed between pages. What's this? She held up the flower. Jordan's voice went soft. A moonflower. You gave it to me when we were 10. You said it reminded you of the moon goddess, and you hoped it would bring me luck in my alpha trials. He swallowed. I kept it all these years. Even when I was cruel to you, even when I rejected you, I couldn't throw it away. Lola stared at the pressed flower for a long moment. Then she closed the box with a snap. Your 5 minutes are up. Jordan nodded and stood, his legs still shaky but holding. Thank you for listening. I'll leave now. Wait. Lola's voice stopped him. She was quiet for a moment, her jaw working like she was fighting with herself. I don't forgive you, Jordan. I don't expect you to. But, she continued, I don't hate you either. You were manipulated. You were lied to. You made terrible choices based on false information. She met his eyes. You're not evil. You're just broken. Jordan felt something crack inside his chest. Not the mate bond that was long gone, but something else. The last of his pride, maybe. I know. The council will come for me eventually, Lola said. They fear the Golden Luna. When they do, they'll use Silvercrest to get to me. They'll threaten your pack, your people, to force me to surrender. I won't let them. I'm not asking you to fight for me, Lola interrupted. I'm asking you to protect your pack, keep them safe. Don't let the council use them as pawns. She took a step closer. And Jordan? Find someone who actually deserves you. Someone who can love you without all this history. There's no one else, Jordan said hoarsely. The moon goddess doesn't give second mates. Then be alone. It's not the worst thing in the world. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. I was alone for 20 years. I survived. Jordan wanted to argue, to tell her that being alone had nearly destroyed her, that she'd tried so hard to earn love from a pack that would never give it. But he had no right to those words anymore, so he just nodded. I'll protect Silvercrest. You have my word. Good. Lola turned to walk away, then paused. And Jordan, thank you for the apology. It means something. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. She walked back through the gates, Calvin immediately moving to her side. The Rogue King gave Jordan a long, measuring look before following her into the settlement. Jordan stood there for a moment, feeling lighter and heavier all at once. He'd said what he needed to say. He'd apologized. He'd accepted that Lola was lost to him forever. It should have felt like closure. Instead, it felt like a door closing on the only good thing he'd ever been given. Henry appeared at his elbow. How do you feel? Jordan watched Lola's retreating figure until she disappeared among the trees. Like I'm finally growing up, he said quietly. About 20 years too late. What now? Now we go home. Jordan straightened his shoulders. forcing himself back into alpha posture. And I do what I should have done from the beginning. I protect my pack, no matter what. As they walked back toward their camp, Jordan didn't look back. Looking back wouldn't change anything. The girl he'd destroyed was gone. In her place was a queen he would spend the rest of his life trying to deserve, even from a distance. It was the least he could do. It was all he had left. Chapter 7. The Council's Ultimatum. The summons arrived 2 weeks after Jordan's departure. It wasn't delivered by messenger or courier. Instead, a sleek black car wound its way up the barely visible dirt path to the dark forest settlement, looking absurdly out of place among the ancient trees and rough cabins. Lola was in the training yard when it arrived, sparring with Juan. She'd progressed from barely holding her own to actually winning matches, her reflexes sharpened by Valeriana's constant presence, her technique honed by Calvin's brutal teaching methods. The car's arrival brought everything to a halt. Calvin emerged from his cabin, his face grim. He'd known this was coming, they all had. The question was never if the council would summon the Golden Luna, but when. The car door opened, and a figure stepped out that made even the battle-hardened rogues take a step back. He was tall and impossibly thin, with pale skin that looked like it had never seen sunlight. His hair was white blonde and hung past his shoulders, but it was his eyes that were truly unsettling. They were completely silver, without pupils, reflecting everything around them like mirrors. "High Elf," Calvin muttered, moving to Lola's side. "Ancient keeper of the supernatural accords. They only send these when it's serious." The elf walked with fluid, inhuman grace, stopping at the edge of the training yard. When he spoke, his voice had a musical quality that was both beautiful and deeply wrong. "I bring summons from the High Council of Supernatural Affairs." He pulled out a sealed letter, the wax stamp glowing with faint blue light. "The entity known as Valeriana and her vessel Lola Richardson are hereby commanded to appear before the council in 3 days' time. Failure to comply will result in immediate sanctions against this settlement and all who reside within." Calvin's hand moved to the sword at his hip. "You're threatening my people?" The elf's silver eyes fixed on him without emotion. "I am delivering a message. The council's patience has limits, Rogue King. The return of a Golden Luna disrupts the carefully maintained balance of power. She must be evaluated, her intentions assessed, and her placement determined." "Placement?" Lola stepped forward, Valeriana growling in her mind. "I'm not a weapon to be assigned. That remains to be determined." The elf held out the letter. "The hearing is in 3 days at the Citadel. Come willingly, or force will be used." His gaze swept the settlement. "Your rogues number 300. The council commands 50,000 wolves across 20 territories. Choose wisely." He placed the letter on the ground, returned to his car, and drove away without another word. The silence that followed was suffocating. Calvin picked up the letter, breaking the seal. His face darkened as he read. "It's worse than I thought." "How bad?" Lola asked. "They're not just summoning you for evaluation. They've already prepared options for your placement." He read from the letter. "Option 1. Return to Silvercrest and complete the mate bond with Jordan McBride under council supervision. Option 2. Select an approved mate from a list of 5 alpha bloodlines they've chosen. Option 3. Submit to containment in the Citadel for study and controlled breeding." The training yard erupted into angry shouts. "They want to breed her like livestock? That's barbaric. We should kill the council." "Enough." Calvin's alpha command cut through the chaos. The rogues fell silent. He looked at Lola, his storm-gray eyes intense. "This is what I warned you about. The council fears power they can't control. They'll dress it up in pretty language about balance and tradition, but what they really want is to collar you." Lola felt Valeriana surge forward, rage making her eyes flash gold. "They can try. They will try," Calvin said grimly. "And if we don't play this smart, they'll wipe out this settlement as a warning to others. 300 rogues against 50,000 wolves, we'd last maybe an hour. So what do we do?" Juan asked. "We can't just let them cage her." Calvin was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. Then he looked at Lola with an expression she couldn't quite read. "We give them what they want. Sort of." What do you mean?" "The council wants you paired with an approved bloodline. Someone they can control through you. Calvin's hand moved to his sword hilt, not threateningly, but like a nervous habit. So we give you a mate, just not one of theirs. Understanding crashed over Lola like a wave. You're suggesting a political bonding. Not a mate bond, those can't be forced, but a formal alliance bond. Calvin's voice was carefully neutral. You claim me as your chosen partner. I claim you as mine. It's not the same as the moon goddess's blessing, but in the eyes of supernatural law, it's binding. You'd do that? Lola breathed. Tie yourself to me politically? That would make you a target too. I've been a target my whole life. Calvin's scarred face split into that terrifying smile. Besides, I'm tired of the council deciding who deserves power and who doesn't. If having the Golden Luna as my partner means I can finally tear down their corrupt system, well, that's a bonus. This isn't a joke, Calvin. They'll try to kill you. Let them try. He took a step closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. But I need to know something first. Can you stand the thought of being bound to me, even politically? Even temporarily? Because once we do this, there's no taking it back without severe consequences. Lola looked at him. Really looked at him. Calvin Benjamin. The Rogue King. The man who'd given her shelter when she had nowhere to go. Who'd trained her to fight. Who'd treated her like a person instead of a goddess or a weapon. Who'd sat with her by the fire and listened to her talk about her fears without judgment. He's asking if we trust him, Valeriana said softly. Not if we love him. If we trust him, do we? Yes. Lola met Calvin's eyes. I can stand it. The question is, can you? I'm not easy to deal with. I have a giant golden wolf in my head who has opinions about everything. I'm still learning combat. I wake up screaming sometimes from nightmares about the execution. And Calvin placed a finger gently against her lips, silencing her. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Your wolf is magnificent. You're a fast learner who never complains about training. And your nightmares are valid, anyone would have them after what you went through. He lowered his hand. I'm not asking you to be perfect, Lola. I'm asking you to let me stand beside you while you burn the world down. Something warm unfurled in Lola's chest. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I aim to please. There's one problem, though. Juan interrupted, making them both jump. They'd forgotten the entire training yard was watching. A political bonding requires the consent of both parties' pack alphas. Lola doesn't have a pack alpha anymore, and Calvin. He trailed off meaningfully. I'm in exile, Calvin finished. I have no pack to negotiate with. Actually, a new voice said from the edge of the clearing. That's not entirely true. Everyone turned. Jordan McBride stood at the settlement entrance, flanked by Henry and 3 other Silvercrest warriors. He looked better than he had 2 weeks ago, clean, fed, rested, but there was something different about him. His posture was less arrogant. His eyes more cautious. What are you doing here? Lola demanded. Jordan raised his hands in a peace gesture. I came to warn you. The council contacted Silvercrest yesterday. They want me to testify at your hearing to confirm that you're unstable and dangerous, that you attacked pack members unprovoked. And you're going to do it? Calvin's hand was on his sword now, his voice deadly quiet. No. Jordan stepped forward alone, leaving his warriors behind. I'm going to testify that you're the victim of a massive conspiracy. That my pack wronged you. That you showed remarkable restraint by not slaughtering us all when you had the power to do so. He looked at Lola. I'm going to tell them the truth. All of it. Why? Lola asked suspiciously. What do you get out of this? Nothing. I'm doing it because it's right. Jordan took a breath. But there's more. I overheard Calvin's plan. The political bonding. He turned to Calvin. You need Pack Alpha approval. I can give you that. I'm not a member of Silvercrest anymore, Lola said flatly. No. But I can formally acknowledge the bonding as the Alpha whose former pack member you were. It's a technicality, but it satisfies the legal requirement. Jordan's expression was pained. I know you don't trust me. I know I don't deserve your trust. But let me do this one thing to help fix what I broke. Calvin and Lola exchanged a long look. He's sincere, Valeriana said. I can feel it. He genuinely wants to help, even if it means watching you bond with another male. That must be killing him. Yes. Which is why he means it. Fine, Lola said finally. But if this is a trick, it's not. Jordan pulled out a rolled parchment from his jacket. I already had the documents drawn up. I just need both of your signatures, and mine as witness and authorizing Alpha. Calvin took the parchment, reading it carefully. His eyebrows rose. This is thorough. You really thought this through. I have a good lawyer. Jordan managed a weak smile, and a lot of motivation to make sure Lola stays free. For the next hour, they worked out the details. The political bonding ceremony would take place that evening. They needed it finalized before appearing at the Citadel. Juan would oversee the ritual as Calvin's second. Jordan would serve as witness and authorizing Alpha. The entire rogue settlement would attend. It wasn't a mate bond. It wasn't love. It was strategy. But as Lola watched Calvin and Jordan negotiate terms, watched the rogue king and the Alpha who'd rejected her work together to protect her freedom, she felt something shift inside her. Maybe family wasn't about blood or bonds forced by the moon goddess. Maybe family was about the people who stood beside you when the world tried to break you down, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The bonding ceremony took place at sunset in the central clearing. Someone had woven wildflowers into an arch, and torches lit the perimeter. It was crude compared to traditional pack ceremonies, but there was a raw beauty to it. Lola wore a simple white dress that Diana Avila, one of the rogue females, had sewn for her. Calvin wore his best leather armor, his long black hair tied back, his scars on full display. They faced each other under the flower arch, while Juan spoke the ritual words. We gather to witness a bonding of choice, not fate. A partnership built on respect, trust, and shared purpose. Juan looked at Calvin. Calvin Benjamin, Rogue King. Do you claim this woman as your partner? Do you swear to stand beside her in battle, to protect her freedom, and to honor her choices? I do, Calvin said, his voice steady and sure. Juan turned to Lola. Lola Richardson, Golden Luna, do you claim this man as your partner? Do you swear to stand beside him in battle, to fight for his people, and to honor his choices? Lola's heart was pounding. This was real. This was happening. I do. Then by the old laws and the new, by moon and blood and choice, I recognize this bond. Juan pulled out a ceremonial blade. Blood seals the agreement. Calvin offered his palm first. Juan made a quick, shallow cut. Then Lola did the same. She didn't flinch. She'd endured far worse in training. They pressed their bleeding palms together. The effect was immediate and startling. A warm rush of energy flowed between them, not the overwhelming force of a mate bond, but something gentler, a connection, an awareness of each other that went deeper than physical. Lola gasped. She could feel Calvin's heartbeat like it was her own, could sense his emotions, determination, protectiveness, and underneath it all, something that felt almost like affection. He actually cares about us, Valeriana said, surprised. Not just about our power, about us. When they pulled their hands apart, the cuts had already healed, leaving only faint white scars in the exact same place on both palms. It's done, Juan announced. They are bonded. The rogues erupted into cheers and howls. Calvin smiled at her, a real smile, not the terrifying battle grin. How does it feel? Strange, Lola admitted. But good. Safe. Good. He squeezed her hand once more before releasing it. Because tomorrow, we go to war with the Council. And I need you to promise me something. What? No matter what happens in that citadel, no matter what they say or threaten, you don't let them cage you. His storm gray eyes blazed. You're a queen, Lola. Queens don't bow. They make others kneel. Lola felt Valeriana surge forward in agreement. I promise. Then let's show them what happens when you try to call her a Golden Luna. As the celebration continued around them, as rogues danced and sang and Jordan watched from the shadows with a bittersweet expression, Lola looked up at the rising moon. Tomorrow, she thought, everything changes. Tomorrow, Valeriana agreed. We stop running. Tomorrow, we fight. Chapter 8. The Assassination and the Awakening. The citadel rose from white cliffs like a monument to ancient power. It was beautiful in the way glaciers were beautiful, cold, sterile, and utterly inhuman. Glass and white stone spiraled upward in impossible architecture, reflecting the morning sun in blinding shards of light. Lola stood at the base of the massive steps leading to the entrance, Calvin at her side. Behind them, 20 rogues formed an honor guard warriors. Calvin had insisted on bringing, despite the council's demand that they come alone. "They won't like this," Lola murmured. "They don't have to like it." Calvin's hand rested casually on his sword hilt. "We're not here to make friends." Jordan had arrived separately with his own delegation, as had representatives from 6 other major packs. The citadel was crawling with supernatural beings, werewolves, yes, but also vampires, shifters of various species, and creatures Lola didn't have names for. All of them stopped to stare as she passed. Word had spread. The Golden Luna wasn't just myth anymore. She was real. And she was here. The main hall was circular and cavernous, designed to hold thousands. Today, it held perhaps 500, the most powerful beings in the supernatural world, all gathered to judge her. 12 seats sat on a raised platform at the far end. The High Council, ancient beings who'd governed supernatural affairs for centuries. In the center seat sat Aurelius, the oldest of them all. He looked human, but there was something wrong about his proportions, his limbs too long, his fingers with too many joints. His eyes were milky white, completely blind, yet somehow Lola felt his gaze boring into her. Lola Richardson. His voice echoed unnaturally, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "Vessel of Valeriana, the Golden Luna. You stand accused of harboring a biological weapon in rogue territory, of rejecting your fated mate and destabilizing pack bonds across the region, of using your power to dominate and control without authorization. How do you plead?" "Not guilty," Lola said clearly. Her voice didn't shake. "To all charges." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "You reject your crimes?" Another council member spoke, a woman with sharp features and eyes like a hawk. "We have testimony that you destroyed pack property, rendered multiple wolves unconscious with your aura, and fled lawful jurisdiction." "I destroyed an execution platform that was being used to murder me," Lola corrected. "I rendered wolves unconscious because the alternative was slaughtering them. And I fled because staying meant death for a crime I didn't commit." "You claim innocence in the murder of Cassidy McBride?" "I was framed." Lola gestured to Jordan, who stood with the Silvercrest delegation. "Alpha Jordan McBride has evidence proving my innocence and identifying the real murderers. Perhaps the council should have investigated before summoning me." Jordan stepped forward, bowing respectfully. "With the council's permission, I'd like to submit evidence." Aurelius waved a too long hand. "Proceed." For the next 20 minutes, Jordan presented everything. His mother's journals detailing the suppression spells, the Wolfsbane supplier's testimony, the blood analysis, witness statements from pack members who'd seen Miriam and Roseanne conspiring. By the time he finished, even the council looked uncomfortable. "This is troubling," Aurelius admitted. "If true, it suggests Alpha Jordan's pack engaged in systematic abuse and attempted murder of a Golden Luna. That alone would warrant severe sanctions." "It's all true," Jordan said firmly. "I take full responsibility as the Alpha who allowed it to happen. But Lola Richardson is innocent of all charges. She's the victim here, not the criminal." "That remains to be determined." The hawk-eyed woman leaned forward. "Even if innocent of murder, the fact remains that a Golden Luna exists. The last time one walked the earth, she started a war that killed thousands. We cannot allow such power to exist unchecked." "So you want to cage me," Lola said flatly. "Dress it up however you like. But that's what this is about. You're afraid of what I represent." "We are concerned about balance," Aurelius corrected. "The Golden Luna belongs to no single pack. She is a heritage asset." "I'm not an asset." Valeriana surged forward, making Lola's eyes flash gold. "I'm a person, and I won't be treated like property." The temperature in the hall dropped as her power radiated outward. Wolves throughout the crowd whimpered, their necks bending involuntarily. "Control yourself," Aurelius commanded. but there was a thread of fear in his voice now. Calvin stepped forward, placing a hand on Lola's shoulder. The touch grounded her, helped her pull Valeriana back. The council seems to have forgotten something important. Lola Richardson is no longer unmated. She accepted a political bond with me 2 days ago. Witnessed and authorized by Alpha Jordan McBride. The hall erupted into chaos. A political bond with a rogue? That's not legitimate. The paperwork is all in order, Calvin said calmly, producing documents. Signed, sealed, and registered with the Supernatural Registry Office. Lola Richardson is formally bonded to me. Any attempt to force her into another pairing is now illegal under your own laws. Aurelius snatched the documents with a too-quick movement, his milky eyes somehow scanning them, his face twisted. This is technically legal, but highly irregular. Irregular but binding, Calvin said. So unless the council wants to invalidate its own laws, Lola stays with me. In my territory. Under my protection. The hawk-eyed woman stood abruptly. This is unacceptable. A golden Luna cannot be allowed to remain with rogues. The destabilization is your problem, not ours, Lola interrupted. You want stability? Stop exiling wolves for petty crimes. Stop forcing mate bonds for political gain. Stop treating power like something to be hoarded and controlled. Her eyes blazed. I didn't ask to be a golden Luna. But now that I am, I'm going to use that power to protect people like me. The rejects. The powerless. The ones your perfect system grinds into dust. You dare threaten this council? I'm not threatening. I'm promising. Lola took a step forward. Leave us alone. Let the rogues live in peace. Or discover firsthand why Golden Lunas ended wars. The silence was absolute. Then Aurelius spoke. His voice like grinding stone. You are dismissed. All of you. The council will deliberate and issue our decision by sunset. They were given quarters in the Citadel to wait luxurious rooms that felt more like cages. Calvin posted guards at the doors, not trusting the council's hospitality. Lola stood at the window, watching the sun arc across the sky. Hours passed. The tension was suffocating. They're going to rule against us, she said quietly. Calvin, sharpening his sword in the corner, didn't disagree. Probably. The question is what they'll try to do about it. Calvin, Lola turned to face him. If this goes badly, if they attack, you should run. Take your rogues and disappear. I can hold them off long enough for you to. No, Calvin. I said no. He set down his sword and crossed to her. We're bonded now. Not by fate, but by choice. That means when you fight, I fight. When you run, I run. And when you stand your ground, he smiled that terrifying smile. I stand with you. Before Lola could respond, the door burst open. Juan stumbled in, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. They're attacking the rogues. The council sent enforcers, 50 of them. They're slaughtering everyone in the courtyard. Calvin's face went cold. He grabbed his sword. How many of ours? 20. We're outnumbered. They're Calvin. They're not trying to arrest them. They're trying to kill them. Then we end this now. Calvin turned to Lola. Can you fight? Just try to stop me. They ran through the corridors, following the sounds of battle. The Citadel's pristine white walls were splattered with blood now. Bodies, both rogues and enforcers, littered the floor. They burst into the courtyard to find carnage. The enforcers were elite warriors, heavily armored and coordinated. They'd surrounded the rogues, cutting them off from escape. Tomas fought like a berserker, taking 3 enforcers with him, but he was bleeding from a dozen wounds. Juan's rogues were falling one by one, overwhelmed by superior numbers and equipment. Enough! Calvin's roar echoed across the courtyard. His alpha command hit the enforcers like a physical force, staggering them. The head enforcer, a scarred brute with silver bands around his arms, sneered. The Rogue King. The council sends their regards. He gestured, and 10 enforcers peeled off to engage Calvin. Calvin met them with brutal efficiency. His sword was a blur, parrying and striking with lethal precision. He moved like water, like smoke, like death itself, but there were too many. Lola started to shift, to release Valeriana, but Calvin's voice cut through her mind via their new bond. No. If you shift, you'll kill everyone here, ours included. Too much power. In too tight a space. Then what do I? A blade erupted from Calvin's chest. Time stopped. The enforcer behind him, a coward who'd struck from behind while Calvin was engaged with others, twisted the silver blade with a cruel smile. Calvin's sword fell from his fingers. He dropped to his knees, blood pouring from the wound. No. Lola's scream could have shattered glass. Everything happened in slow motion. She was running toward him, but she was too far. The enforcer raised his blade for a killing blow. Calvin looked up, his storm-gray eyes finding hers one last time. I don't regret it, his voice whispered through their bond. Any of it. The blade fell, and something inside Lola broke. Not broke like shattering. Broke like a dam bursting. Broke like chains snapping. Broke like a phoenix igniting. Power exploded from her in a shockwave that threw everyone, friend and foe alike, back 20 feet. The courtyard stones cracked. Windows shattered. The air itself seemed to catch fire with golden light. Lola didn't shift. She didn't need to. Her eyes blazed pure gold, so bright they hurt to look at. Her hair lifted in an invisible wind. Her hands glowed like she was holding stars. She raised one hand toward Calvin's collapsed form. Golden light poured from her fingers into his wound. But this wasn't just healing. This was something else entirely. Something primal and ancient and forbidden. Golden Luna blood is legend, Valeriana whispered, taking over completely. Let's make a new legend. Lola bit her wrist until blood flowed, then pressed it to Calvin's lips. Drink, she commanded. Calvin's eyes fluttered open. On pure instinct, he drank. The effect was instant and catastrophic. The wound in his chest sealed as if it had never been. His eyes, storm gray a moment before, flickered and changed. Silver bled through, marking him forever as touched by the Golden Luna's power. But more than that, the bond between them, that political thing they'd created 2 days ago, suddenly caught fire and transformed into something else. Something stronger. Not a mate bond given by the moon goddess, but a bond forged by choice and sealed in blood and desperation. A true bond. Calvin gasped as it snapped into place. He could feel everything she felt. Could sense her power, her rage, her fear for him. What did you do? He breathed. I chose you, Lola said simply. Fully. Forever. No takebacks. She stood, pulling him up with her. They faced the remaining enforcers together, power radiating off them both now. Lola's golden. Calvin's silver. You want to kill us? Lola's voice echoed with divine authority. Try. The head enforcer, bleeding and terrified, tried to rally his troops. She's one girl. Attack. Lola raised her hand. Every enforcer in the courtyard dropped to their knees, their throats bared, unable to resist the absolute command of a Golden Luna no longer holding back. You will return to the council, Lola commanded. You will tell them that the Dark Forest is now under my protection. You will tell them that any attack on my people will be considered an attack on me. And you will tell them. She smiled, and it was Calvin's terrifying smile reflected back, that if they send assassins again, I will come to the citadel and burn it to the ground. You can't threaten. I'm not threatening. I'm promising. The enforcers fled. Lola turned to Calvin, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Are you okay? I'm alive, thanks to you. He touched his chest where the wound had been. Not even a scar. Then he looked at his hands, they still glowed faintly silver. What? What am I now? Mine, Lola said. If you'll have me. Calvin laughed, pulling her into a fierce kiss. It was nothing like the tentative, fearful girl who'd knelt at an execution block. This was a queen claiming her king. When they pulled apart, the rogues were cheering. Juan, battered but alive, grinned through his blood and bruises. Does this mean we get to burn down the council? Eventually, Calvin promised, but first we go home. They left the citadel with their heads high, carrying their wounded, having made their message clear. The Golden Luna would not be caged, and anyone who tried would learn why legends were feared. Chapter 9. The Golden Rain. The council's official response came 3 days after the Citadel incident. It wasn't the war Calvin had expected. It was something far more insidious, a decree, stamped with the seals of all 12 council members, declaring the Dark Forest an autonomous zone under observation. In other words, they were leaving the rogues alone. For now. But they were watching, waiting for a mistake, an excuse to strike. It's a trap, Juan said, reading the decree for the 5th time. They were gathered in Calvin's cabin, the war room, as the rogues had started calling it. A large table dominated the space, covered in maps and reports. They're giving us just enough rope to hang ourselves. Probably, Calvin agreed. He stood at the window, one hand absently touching his chest where the fatal wound had been. The silver glow in his eyes hadn't faded. If anything, it had intensified over the past 3 days. But it buys us time to prepare. Lola studied the map spread across the table. Red marks indicated packs loyal to the council. Blue marks showed neutral territories. And scattered throughout were green marks, packs that had reached out quietly, asking questions about the Dark Forest, about the Golden Luna, about whether the rumors of rogues being healed were true. We're getting requests, she said quietly. Exiles from 7 different packs asking for sanctuary. Omegas who've been abused. Wolves who committed crimes like loving the wrong person or questioning their alpha's orders. She looked up at Calvin. What do we tell them? We tell them yes, Calvin said immediately. That's the whole point. We build something better than what the council offers. We can't take everyone, Juan argued. We barely have resources for 300. How do we feed, house and protect 3,000, or 10,000, or CZZ? We expand. Calvin turned from the window, his silver eyes blazing with purpose. We stop hiding in the forest like criminals and start building a real kingdom. Agriculture. Infrastructure. Trade. Everything the council says rogues are too broken to achieve. That will provoke them, Lola warned. Good. I'm done being reactive. Calvin moved to the table, placing his hands on the map. For 10 years I've been playing defense, saving rogues one at a time, keeping them stable enough to survive. But survival isn't living. It's time we built something worth fighting for. Over the next 3 months, the Dark Forest transformed. The first major change was housing. The crude cabins were expanded and reinforced. Skilled rogues, carpenters, stonemasons, craftsmen who'd been exiled for petty crimes were given free rein to design and build. A proper infirmary was established, with Ruth Conrad, yes, that Ruth Conrad, who'd shown up one night with tear-stained cheeks and a formal apology leading the healing efforts. She'd been exiled from Silvercrest after testifying honestly about Miriam's crimes. Jordan had tried to protect her, but the council had demanded a scapegoat. I'm so sorry, Ruth had sobbed when she arrived. I knew something was wrong. I should have investigated deeper. I should have questioned. Lola had stopped her with a hand on her shoulder. You testified honestly in the end. That took courage. You're welcome here. Now Ruth ran the infirmary with ruthless efficiency, training younger wolves in healing arts the council usually restricted to approved practitioners. Agriculture came next. Cleared land was planted with crops. Hunting parties brought in game to be preserved. A smokehouse was built, then a granary, then a mill. The rogues weren't just surviving anymore. They were thriving, and word spread. By the end of the 3rd month, the population had swelled to 800. Exiles, abuse victims, and political refugees flooded in daily. Each one told stories of corrupt alphas, rigged trials, and pack hierarchies that crushed anyone different. Each one was welcomed, but with growth came new challenges. We need formal structure. Juan argued during a council meeting. Yes, they had councils now, with representatives from different groups within the settlement. Right now, everything runs through you and Calvin. But if you're both killed, if you're captured, everything collapses. He's right, Tommy Blake added. The former rogue had become head of security, organizing patrols and training programs. We need succession plans, laws, consequences for rule breaking that don't rely on Calvin's personal judgment. Calvin looked at Lola across the table. Through their bond, she felt his reluctance. He'd always been a lone wolf, making decisions by instinct rather than committee. We have to let go, she sent through their bond. This is bigger than us now. I know. Doesn't mean I have to like it. You don't have to like it. You just have to do it, he sighed. Fine. 1. Start drafting a legal code. Tommy. Work with him on enforcement structures. Ruth. We need education programs, not just healing, but reading, mathematics, everything the council restricts. If we're building a kingdom, we build it on knowledge, not ignorance. The meeting continued for hours, plans building on plans. By the time it ended, Lola's head was spinning. She found herself walking to the cliff edge behind Calvin's cabin, their cabin now, though they still maintained separate sleeping areas. The bond between them was powerful, but they'd agreed to let the relationship develop naturally rather than forcing intimacy. Quite the view. Lola turned to find Jordan approaching slowly, hands visible and empty. He'd been visiting regularly since the Citadel incident, bringing supplies and information about council movements. Silvercrest had formally allied with the Dark Forest, a relationship that had cost Jordan politically but which he maintained stubbornly. What brings you here? Lola asked, not unkindly. Jordan stopped a respectful distance away. I wanted to check on you. The council's been quiet, which makes me nervous. Me too. They stood in companionable silence for a moment. The awkwardness between them had faded over the months, replaced by something like friendship, or at least mutual respect. You're happy here, Jordan observed. It wasn't a question. I am. With him. Still not a question. Calvin. Lola glanced at him. The golden scar on Jordan's chest, the unworthy mark, had faded slightly, but it would never fully disappear. A permanent reminder of his mistakes. Yes, she said simply. With him. Jordan nodded slowly. Good. That's good. He meant it, even though the words clearly cost him. He's better for you than I ever was. He sees you, not just your power or your wolf, or what you represent. He sees Lola. Jordan. Let me finish. He turned to face her fully. I spent 20 years being the worst possible mate. I don't get to be jealous now that you've found someone who actually deserves you. But I do get to be grateful that you're safe, that you're building something beautiful here. And, he swallowed hard, that you're finally happy. Lola felt something twist in her chest. Not love that was long dead, but compassion. You're a better man than you were 3 months ago. I'm trying. Jordan managed a weak smile. Some days are harder than others. Fenris still mourns the bond. But we're learning to live with our choices. Have you considered stepping down as alpha? Letting someone else lead Silvercrest? Jordan's laugh was bitter. Every single day. But Henry convinced me to stay. Said running away from my responsibilities would just prove the council right that I'm weak. So I stay. I lead. I try to make Silvercrest into something you would have been proud to call home. For what it's worth, Lola said softly, I think you're doing well. The reforms you've implemented, ending the Omega subjugation, opening pack trials to external witnesses, banning forced matings, that takes courage. It's the least I can do. Jordan looked out over the valley, where the settlement sprawled below. You're building something revolutionary here, Lola. A place where power doesn't determine worth, where exiles become citizens, where the broken are made whole. He met her eyes. The council fears this more than they fear your wolf. Because if you succeed, every pack structure in the world becomes obsolete. Is that a warning? It's a promise. They will come for you again. And next time, they won't send 50 enforcers. They'll send thousands. Jordan's expression was grim. I just wanted you to be prepared. Before Lola could respond, Calvin appeared, moving with that preternatural silence he'd gained since drinking her blood. Am I interrupting? No, Jordan said quickly. I was just leaving. He nodded to them both. I'll send word if I hear anything from the council. He left, and Calvin moved to stand beside Lola at the cliff edge. He's in love with you still, Calvin observed neutrally, in his own broken way. I know. But it doesn't matter. That ship sailed and sank. Lola leaned into Calvin's side. Besides, I'm exactly where I want to be. Calvin wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Even knowing what's coming, Jordan's right, the council will attack again. And next time, they'll bring overwhelming force. Then we'll be ready. Lola looked up at him. We've got 800 fighters now. More arriving daily. Ruth's training healers. Tommy's training warriors. Juan's organizing supply lines. We're not just a settlement anymore, Calvin. We're becoming an army. An army needs a general. It has to. Lola smiled. A rogue king and a golden Luna. I like our odds. Calvin laughed, pulling her closer. Your optimism is terrifying. Good. Let them be terrified for once. They stood together as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Below them, the settlement was alive with activity. Wolves training, children playing, builders constructing, families forming. This was what they were fighting for. Not power or territory or revenge. Freedom. Choice. The simple right to exist without someone's boot on your neck. They're going to try to destroy us, Valeriana whispered. Let them try, Lola thought back. We've died once already. We're not afraid anymore. The attack came on a night with no moon. They should have seen it coming, the signs were all there. Scouts reporting increased patrols at the borders. Council representatives visiting neutral packs, making threats and promises. Jordan's increasingly urgent warnings. But they'd been so focused on building, on creating, that they'd let their guard down. The first explosion tore through the eastern perimeter just after midnight. Fire bloomed against the darkness, and the screams began. Calvin was on his feet instantly, sword in hand, defensive positions. His alpha command carried across the settlement, waking those still sleeping. Lola shifted as she ran, her transformation seamless now after months of practice. Valeriana burst forth in a cascade of golden light, and together they raced toward the flames. What they found was carnage. The attackers weren't wearing council colors. They wore black, their faces covered, moving with military precision. Mercenaries. Hired killers with no allegiance, except to gold. But behind them, directing the assault, Lola spotted the telltale silver armbands of council enforcers. Deniability. The council wanted the Dark Forest destroyed but didn't want to be officially responsible. Cowards, Valeriana snarled. Lola roared, the sound echoing across the battlefield. The attackers nearest her actually stumbled, their wolf instincts screaming at them to submit or flee. But these were mercenaries. They'd been trained to resist alpha commands. They regrouped quickly, silver weapons gleaming as they advanced. Calvin appeared at her flank, his own wolf form now touched with silver light. Together, they were a storm golden light and silver fury, tearing through the attackers with brutal efficiency. But there were so many. 50 mercenaries. 100. More flooding through the breach in their defenses. We can't hold them all. Calvin sent through their bond. There are civilians. Children. We need to evacuate. A new sound cut through the chaos. A howl, deep and powerful, coming from the western woods. Then another. And another. Lola's heart leaped. Through the trees came reinforcements. Wolves in formation, their eyes blazing with purpose. Leading them was Jordan, his black wolf massive and furious. You didn't think I'd let you fight alone, did you? Jordan's voice echoed in her mind, still able to reach her through the severed bond's memory. Silvercrest stands with the Dark Forest. Behind Jordan's pack came others. Smaller groups, packs Lola recognized from the neutral territories. They'd been watching, waiting to see if the Golden Luna's kingdom would survive. Now they'd made their choice. The tide of battle turned. The mercenaries, caught between the Dark Forest's defenders and the arriving reinforcements, began to falter. They'd been paid to attack a settlement of rogues, not fight a coordinated army. One by one, they broke and ran. By dawn, it was over. 23 dead on their side. 40 wounded. But they'd held. The settlement stood. Lola shifted back to human form, exhausted and covered in blood. Calvin did the same, immediately pulling her close. We won, he murmured against her hair. We survived, Lola corrected, but they'll come again. I know. Jordan approached in human form, flanked by Henry. The council will deny involvement. say these were rogue mercenaries acting independently. Of course they will. Calvin's jaw was tight. Which means they'll try again, and again, until they wear us down or we make a mistake. Unless, Jordan said slowly, we don't give them the chance. Everyone looked at him. What are you suggesting? Lola asked. Jordan's expression was grim. We take the fight to them. We call a summit of every pack tired of the Council's tyranny. We form an alliance, and we march on the Citadel with enough force that they can't ignore us anymore. That's open rebellion, Henry warned. Yes. Jordan looked at Lola. But isn't that what you wanted? To tear down the system and build something better? You can't do that by hiding in the forest. No matter how strong you are. You need to be seen. You need to lead. Lola looked at Calvin. Through their bond, she felt his mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was what they'd been building toward. The moment when they stopped being victims and became revolutionaries. What do you think? She asked him silently. I think, Calvin sent back, that queens don't hide. They rule. Lola turned to face the assembled fighters, her people, her family. Spread the word, she commanded, her voice carrying across the settlement. In 1 month we hold a summit here. Every pack that's suffered under the Council's rule. Every exile, every victim, every wolf tired of bowing to corrupt authority. Her eyes blazed gold. We're done asking for permission to exist. It's time we took our freedom. The roar that greeted her words could have shaken mountains. The Golden Luna had declared war, and the supernatural world would never be the same. Chapter 10, Coronation of Fire. The summit was scheduled for the winter solstice, exactly 1 month after the mercenary attack. In that month, the Dark Forest settlement transformed yet again. What had been a refugee camp for rogues became something else entirely, a rallying point. A symbol, the physical manifestation of an idea that had been festering in the supernatural world for centuries. What if we could choose our own leaders? What if power served the people instead of controlling them? They came in droves. Small packs from the borderlands, tired of paying tribute to distant alphas who gave nothing in return. Omega groups who'd banded together after fleeing abusive hierarchies. Individual wolves who'd been exiled for crimes like disrespecting authority or questioning tradition. By the time the solstice arrived, over 3,000 wolves had gathered in and around the Dark Forest. 3,000 voices demanding change. The Council, predictably, issued a decree declaring the summit illegal, and anyone attending to be in violation of supernatural law. They threatened sanctions, exile, even execution. Nobody cared. The night of the solstice, a massive bonfire blazed in the valley where Lola had first met the rogues months ago. It seemed fitting, this place where she'd first learned that broken things could heal, that outcasts could become family. Lola stood on a raised platform Calvin's people had built, looking out at the sea of faces illuminated by firelight. So many stories. So much pain. So much hope. Calvin stood beside her, his silver eyes scanning the crowd constantly, always alert for threats. Jordan was there too, representing Silvercrest and the growing coalition of reform-minded packs. Juan, Tommy, Ruth, and dozens of others who'd become leaders in their own right. And in the shadows at the edge of the gathering, Lola spotted unfamiliar faces. Vampires. Bear shifters. Even a few fae, their eyes glowing like distant stars. The supernatural world was watching. Ready? Calvin murmured. Lola squeezed his hand. No. But let's do it anyway. She stepped forward, and the crowd fell silent instantly. 3,000 wolves, all focused on her with an intensity that would have terrified the girl she'd been 6 months ago. But she wasn't that girl anymore. 6 months ago, Lola began, her voice carrying across the valley without need for amplification, one of Valeriana's gifts. I knelt at an execution block. I was about to die for a crime I didn't commit, sentenced by a mate who'd rejected me in a pack that had spent 20 years telling me I was worthless. The crowd was utterly still. I should have died that day. The axe fell. But instead of an ending, I found a beginning. Instead of death, I found my wolf, and instead of acceptance from those who judged me, she smiled, I found freedom with those they'd cast aside. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. The council says we're dangerous, that rogues are unstable, that wolves without pack structure inevitably go mad. Lola's eyes blazed gold. But look around. 3,000 rogues standing here tonight. Sane. Organized. United. We're not mad. We're not monsters. We're just tired of being told that our worth is determined by bloodline or rank or whether we're lucky enough to be born with the right kind of strength. The system is broken, someone shouted from the crowd. Yes! Lola's voice rose. The system is broken. It has been for centuries. Alphas abuse their power because there's no check on their authority. Omegas are treated as property. Exile is used as a weapon to eliminate anyone who questions. Mate bonds are forced for political gain. And wolves like me, her voice cracked slightly. Wolves who don't fit the mold are erased. She paused, letting the words sink in. But tonight, we end that. Tonight we declare that there's another way. We're forming something new, not a pack in the traditional sense, but a kingdom. A place where your worth isn't determined by your rank. Where laws protect everyone, not just the powerful. Where exile is a last resort, not a first response. The council will never allow it. A voice called out elderly. Weathered, but not hostile. Just realistic. I know, Lola agreed. Which is why in 3 days, we march on the Citadel. The crowd erupted into shocked murmurs. Calvin stepped forward. The council has ignored every peaceful attempt at reform. They've sent assassins. They've threatened families. They've made it clear they'd rather slaughter us than allow change. His voice was hard as steel. So we give them a choice. Negotiate or fight. Reform or fall. They have 50,000 warriors, someone pointed out. And we have something they don't, Calvin countered. We have a cause worth dying for. Every wolf here has been wronged by the current system. Every one of you has a reason to fight. That makes us dangerous in a way numbers can't match. Jordan spoke next, his voice carrying the weight of his alpha authority. Silvercrest stands with the Dark Forest. As do the Riverrun Pack, the Northern Ridge Pack, and 15 others who've formally pledged support. That's another 10,000 warriors. We're not asking you to march alone. And, Ruth added, stepping forward with her healer's satchel, we're not planning a massacre. Our goal is to force the council to the negotiating table, to make them see that change is inevitable. If we can do that without bloodshed, we will. But if they force our hand, Lola said quietly, we will fight, and we will win. Because I am not just Lola Richardson anymore. I am the vessel of Valeriana, the Golden Luna, and any wolf who stands against this rebellion stands against me. She let the weight of that sink in. 3,000 wolves in this valley. 3,000 more who'd pledged support from their territories. And at their head, a creature of legend that even the council feared. So I ask you now, Lola said, her voice ringing with power and purpose. Will you march with me? Will you stand for a world where your children don't have to fear exile for being different? Will you fight for the right to choose your own destiny? The roar that answered her could have been heard in the Citadel itself. Miles away. 3,000 voices. One word. Yes. The march took 2 days. They moved in formation, organized into units by Tommy and the other warriors. The army, because that's what they were now, stretched for miles. Wolves in their thousands, flanked by supply wagons, healers, and scouts. It was the largest gathering of rogues and reform-minded packs in supernatural history. The council, naturally, had been preparing. When Lola's army arrived at the Citadel, they found it ringed by defenders. Thousands of council loyalists, their armor gleaming, their weapons blessed with silver and wolfsbane. But they found something else too. Civilians, hundreds of them, lining the road to the Citadel, watching the army pass. Some looked fearful, others looked curious, and more than a few looked hopeful. Word had spread. The Golden Luna was marching. The outcasts were demanding justice, and the people, even those who'd lived comfortably under council rule, were wondering if maybe, just maybe, change was possible. Lola called a halt 100 yards from the Citadel gates. The army spread out behind her, a sea of determined faces and raised banners. From the Citadel walls, Aurelius appeared, flanked by the other council members, his milky white eyes somehow fixed on Lola despite his blindness. "Lola Richardson," his voice boomed. "You bring an army to our gates. This is treason of the highest order. This is justice delayed," Lola called back. "We come with demands, not swords, though we're prepared to use both if necessary. You cannot threaten this council." "I'm not threatening. I'm negotiating." Lola stepped forward alone, leaving even Calvin behind. It was a show of confidence and strength. "Here are our terms. 1. Exile will no longer be used as a punishment for minor infractions. Serious crimes only, with right to appeal. 2. Mate bonds will be choice-based. No forced pairings for political gain. 3. Omega wolves receive full rights and protections under law. 4. Pack alphas who abuse their authority can be challenged and removed by their own people." The silence from the Citadel was deafening. "These are not demands," Aurelius said finally. "These are the destruction of everything we've built." "Everything you've built is rotting from the inside," Lola countered. "Look around you. 3,000 wolves are here because your system failed them. Tens of thousands more are watching to see what happens today. You can fight us and maybe you'll win. Your army is larger. Your warriors better equipped. But even if you kill every wolf in this valley, the idea survives. And ideas are harder to kill than people." She let that hang in the air, or, she continued, "You can negotiate. We can work together to create something better. A system that protects the powerful and the weak. That values tradition but allows for change. That makes room for wolves like me, different but not dangerous." "Why should we trust you?" the hawk-eyed council member demanded. "You're a golden Luna. Your kind has started wars before." "Because I don't want war," Lola said simply. "I want peace, but not peace bought with submission. Real peace, where everyone has a voice." Aurelius conferred quietly with the other council members. The wait was agonizing. Behind Lola, she could feel her army's tension, warriors gripping weapons, ready for either outcome. Finally, Aurelius spoke. "We will consider your demands, but such sweeping changes require time, deliberation. We cannot simply, 'You have 3 hours,'" Calvin interrupted, stepping up beside Lola. 3 hours to give us a real answer. Not 'we'll consider it.' Not 'we need more time.' Yes or no. Reform or war. Choose." The council members looked genuinely shaken. They'd ruled for centuries without being challenged. The idea that someone could give them an ultimatum was incomprehensible. But they looked at the army, at the 3,000 determined faces, at the civilians watching from nearby buildings, their expressions unreadable, and they looked at Lola, the golden Luna, whose very existence made a mockery of everything they claimed about power and bloodlines. 3 hours. Aurelius agreed finally. "We will have an answer." The 3 hours felt like 3 years. Lola sat with Calvin and Jordan on a hillside overlooking both the Citadel and their army. They didn't speak much. There wasn't much to say. Either the council would agree to reform, and they'd have won without bloodshed, or they'd refuse, and thousands would die in the fighting that followed. "No matter what happens," Jordan said quietly, "this was the right thing to do. Standing up to them. Demanding change. Even if we lose?" Lola asked. "Especially if we lose," Jordan smiled sadly. "Because people will remember that someone tried, and maybe next time, more will join." "There won't be a next time," Calvin said firmly. "We're not losing. I refuse to accept that outcome." Lola leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. Through their bond, she felt his determination, his love, his absolute conviction that they could win. "Whatever happens," she sent through their bond, "I'm glad I met you." "Don't talk like that," Calvin sent back. "We're going to survive this. We're going to build our kingdom. And we're going to live long enough to be insufferable about how right we were." Lola laughed despite the tension. When the 3 hours ended, they walked back to face the Citadel. Aurelius appeared on the walls again. His expression was unreadable. "The council has reached a decision," he announced. His voice was measured, giving nothing away. "Regarding your demands," the world held its breath. "We agree." The words hung in the air for a heartbeat. Then chaos erupted, cheering from the army, shocked gasps from the council's own warriors, and a roar of approval from the civilians watching. Silence! Aurelius's command cut through the noise. We agree, with conditions. Implementation will be gradual, over 5 years. A joint committee, half council members, half representatives from your coalition will oversee the transition, and, he paused, the Dark Forest will be recognized as an autonomous kingdom under the leadership of Calvin Benjamin and Lola Richardson. You will have the same rights and responsibilities as any other pack territory. Lola felt tears streaming down her face. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. However, Aurelius continued, and Lola's heart sank. Such a kingdom requires formal recognition, which means his blind eyes somehow found hers. A coronation. If you want to be treated as royalty, you must be crowned as such. 3 days hence, you will undergo the traditional ceremony. Both of you. Calvin squeezed Lola's hand. We accept. The coronation took place in the valley where the summit had been held, now transformed into something magical. Someone, probably Juan, had organized everything. An arch of woven silver and gold stood at the valley's center. Torches lined pathways. Flowers that shouldn't bloom in winter somehow adorned every surface. Thousands attended. Not just their army, but representatives from every major pack. Even some council members, looking uncomfortable but present. Lola wore a dress that Diana Avila had spent 3 days creating, white silk that shimmered gold in the light, fitted at the bodice and flowing at the skirt. Her hair was unbound, falling in waves past her shoulders. Calvin wore black leather armor decorated with silver threads, his long hair pulled back, his scars on full display. He looked like a warrior king from legends. They walked to the arch together, hand in hand. Jordan performed the ceremony, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. We gather to witness the crowning of a new kingdom, not born from conquest, but from choice, not maintained by force, but by the will of the people. He gestured to Tommy, who stepped forward carrying 2 crowns on a velvet pillow. Calvin's was made of black iron and silver, sharp-edged and dangerous-looking. Lola's was woven from gold and moonstone, delicate but strong. Calvin Benjamin, Jordan said, lifting the first crown. Do you swear to protect those who cannot protect themselves? To lead with wisdom, not just strength? To value every voice in your kingdom, from the mightiest warrior to the smallest child? I swear, Calvin said clearly. Jordan placed the crown on his head. Then, I name you king of the Eclipse Kingdom, where darkness and light meet as equals. He turned to Lola. Lola Richardson, do you swear to use your power not for domination but for protection? To remember where you came from, even as you lead? To never let the broken feel alone? Lola's voice was steady. I swear. Jordan placed her crown carefully, his hands shaking slightly. Then I name you Queen of the Eclipse Kingdom. May your reign be just. May your people flourish. And may you never forget the girl who knelt at an execution block and chose to rise. The valley erupted into cheers and howls that echoed across the mountains. Calvin turned to Lola, his silver eyes bright. How does it feel to be a queen? Terrifying, she admitted. You? Same. Good thing we're doing it together. He pulled her close and kissed her, not the gentle, tentative kisses they'd shared before, but a claiming, a declaration, a promise. When they broke apart, the crowd was losing their minds with joy. We did it, Valeriana whispered, her voice full of wonder. We actually did it. We did, Lola agreed. The girl they tried to kill became the queen they had to bow to. That night, as celebrations raged around them, Lola and Calvin slipped away to the cliff edge behind their cabin. Do you think it'll last? Lola asked, looking out at their kingdom, no longer just a settlement, but a real, recognized nation. The peace? The reforms? Probably not, Calvin said honestly. The council will resist. Some packs will reject the changes. There will be challenges, maybe even wars. He wrapped an arm around her. But we started something today that can't be stopped. We proved that outcasts can organize, that broken things can be made whole, that power doesn't have to corrupt. No pressure then, Lola joked weakly. Hey. Calvin tilted her chin up to look at him. 6 months ago, you were kneeling at an execution block. Today, you're a queen with an army. If you can survive that transformation, you can handle anything. Lola laughed, the sound free and genuine. Fair point. They stood together as the stars came out, watching their people celebrate below. Wolves danced around the bonfire. Children played without fear. Exiles had become citizens. The worthless had become priceless. Jordan appeared one last time, approaching slowly. I'm heading back to Silvercrest in the morning. Thank you, Lola said sincerely. For everything. For believing me. For standing with us. For finally becoming the man I should have been 20 years ago? Jordan finished. He smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. I still love you, you know. Probably always will. But I love you enough to be happy that you're happy, even if it's not with me. Calvin, instead of bristling, extended his hand. You're welcome in our kingdom anytime, Jordan. As an ally. As a friend. Jordan shook his hand. Thank you. Both of you. He looked at Lola one last time. Rule well, my queen. Then he was gone, disappearing into the celebration. That was kind of you, Lola murmured, being gracious to him. He earned it, Calvin said. He made mistakes. He owned them. He helped fix them. That's all anyone can ask. Lola turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd become her partner, her king, her choice. I love you. Calvin's breath caught. They'd danced around the words for months, the bond between them making them unnecessary, but hearing them out loud still mattered. I love you too, he whispered back. My queen, my partner, my choice. They kissed as the celebrations continued below, two broken people who'd found wholeness together, who'd turned exile into empire, who'd proven that true power came not from bloodlines or legends, but from standing up when the world tried to push you down. The Golden Luna had awakened at an execution block. She'd ended as a queen, and her reign was only beginning. Epilogue. 3 years later, a baby's cry echoed through the Eclipse Kingdom's palace. Lola held her daughter Tiny Perfect, with Calvin's gray eyes and golden wisps of hair that already seemed to glow. She's beautiful, Calvin breathed, tears streaming down his face. She's ours, Lola corrected, exhausted but radiant. Ruth finished her examination, smiling. Healthy. Strong. And, she paused. Her wolf is already present. I can sense it. You've birthed the first natural-born Golden Luna in 800 years. Lola looked down at her daughter, who'd stopped crying, and was now watching her with unusual alertness for a newborn. What will you name her? Juan asked from the doorway. Lola didn't hesitate. Hope. We're naming her Hope, because that's what she represented. Hope for a future where power and compassion coexisted, where broken things could heal, where outcasts could come home. The girl who'd been wolfless had become a queen. The queen had become a mother, and the cycle of hope continued. Dear viewers, as we reach the end of Lola's incredible journey from execution block to throne, I want to ask you something. If you were in Jordan's position, realizing too late that you destroyed the most precious thing you'd ever been given, could you live with that regret? Or would you have fought harder to see the truth before it was too late? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story of rejection turning into revolution moved you, please hit that like button. It helps us bring you more epic tales like this. Until next time, remember, true power isn't about who bows to you. It's about who you choose to lift up when you rise.